Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel and welcome to my Omnibus series. I've got so many of these omnibuses that are going to come out so that you'll be able to listen to an hour's worth of stories, which I know you're going to love. You know, the thing is that telling stories is such a fine art, and it's something that was practiced hundreds of years ago when people didn't have the technology that we have today. And everyone would gather around the fire and listen to a wonderful story. And also, what is so wonderful about a story is that personally, I think it is the best way to go to sleep. Every night when I go to bed, I always listen to stories. And that's something that parents used to do with their children. It's something that they still do with their children. There's nothing better than a good story. And so I hope you're going to enjoy this series. And before we start, I just want to say, do subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss out on anything. Because I'm in for the long haul and I want to make sure that you get the most stunning stories to go to bed with at night or to listen to when you want to be one of those people sitting beside the fire and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I hope you're going to enjoy the omnibus.
Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, it doesn't feel right sitting in this car next to my boyfriend Warren. It really doesn't. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing here. I don't even know if I like Warren all that much, even though he's a reasonably nice guy. He's kind of weird. He looks rather like a science nerd. He's very skinny with spunky hair that stands up like a hedgehog's spikes. You know the kind of look I'm talking about. So he rather resembles a mad scientist with a shock of wild blonde hair that frames a distinctively baby face. I think his innocent, very sweet face is one of his redeeming features. He's got these adorable dimples on both sides of his mouth and has lively greenish hazel eyes that change colours in different lights that I find rather attractive. Many young ladies my age would likely not give Warren a second glance. He's kind of nerdy, you see. Perhaps I wouldn't have either, until we got talking, of course, and I found myself inexplicably drawn to him, rather like a moth to a nightlight. I'm not exactly sure why that was the case. Maybe I was looking for a boyfriend to silence my mother's loud voice that was still ringing obtrusively in my head. If I didn't find love any time soon, I would be tragically left on the shelf, which was a sad thought that propelled me to go out that night with my girlfriends to a local bar. That was where I'd met Warren. Don't get me wrong, I would so much rather have stayed at home in my quiet little apartment, but fate had other ideas for me that night. It's amazing how after a couple of vodka martinis, how attractive someone can become in your sight, as if all the things in your sober state that might make you pull away are immediately dissolved, like the aspirin in a glass of water. I'll say that Warren is clever, but being clever does not make you down to earth at all. It doesn't make you easygoing, nor does it make you remotely practical. Sometimes I get the distinctive feeling that Warren sees the world like a collection of atoms spinning around in circles, the way a scientist always does. In the very beginning, I was rather idiosyncratically attracted to Warren's quirky eccentricities that I found somewhat endearing, rather cute and oddly refreshing. But now his bizarre weirdness has become a little uncomfortable of late. Let's just say he can sometimes spout some seriously strange stuff and ask me some really odd, peculiar questions. We are taking a long road trip to the Oregon coast to meet his parents. This should be sounding alarm bells for me. Ostensibly, if a boyfriend wants to introduce you to his parents, then he's got to be serious about you. I don't really want Warren to be serious about me. I don't want to lead him up the garden path or make him believe we're a serious couple, as I have been thinking of ending things between us. My best friend Ellie, short for Eloise, who always seems to know what's best for me, tells me that I should nip things in the bud with Warren. Tell him the toast is buttered. The train has long since departed the platform, if you know what I mean. I guess she's been ever so diplomatic, because she wants me to end things with Warren as kindly as I can. But I haven't been able to do so. Something appears to be stopping me, like an enigmatic roadblock in my own life. Ellie believes I'm cruelly stringing Warren along, like a puppet on a string, and I'll discard him as soon as the roadshow is over. And she's probably right about that. I guess I was rather lonely at the time. Not that I've ever really been bold enough to admit that to myself, as the word lonely can be an ugly word indeed, that makes you feel like somewhat of a misfit. When I first met Warren, it was at a trendy, hip bar in Portland, frequented by a lot of young people like myself. Warren and I got talking together, and then he swept me off my feet, which I suspect was easy enough for him to do, as when I'm a tad inebriated, the world seems to become a hilariously funny place for me. I am quite a likeable drunk, actually. I make people laugh with my quirky, outlandish behaviour. My friend Ellie says I should stop at 2 glasses of wine, as after my 3rd drink, I begin to laugh very inappropriately, like a hyena, and embarrass myself in the process. On one occasion over 5 years ago, when I was quite the social butterfly, I began pointing at a woman in the bar who was wearing purple leggings and laughing at her like mad, making the poor woman so self-conscious about her attire that she was trying to cover her legs with her shoulder bag, with very little success, I might add. I was saying, "She's got purple leggings, she's got purple leggings," and laughing so much about it that everyone in the bar responded to me and began to laugh as well. They weren't actually laughing at the woman, they were laughing with me, because my laughter was infectious. The lady felt dreadfully self-conscious and rather humiliated, so she bolted out of the bar as fast as she could. I doubt she'll ever be seen dead wearing those purple leggings again. Why I found them so amusing, in my drunken state, is beyond me. If you've been single for long enough, you might be painfully aware of how loneliness can creep into your life, rather like a leak in the roof, and before you know it, the ceiling begins to sag and fold in on itself, until it becomes so dreadfully bad, you're compelled to do something about it. I was well aware that my single status as a woman in her late 20s that had not been dating for the last 5 years or so meant I was practically sitting on the shelf like an old can of sardines in the larder that had long since passed its sell-by date. But I will remind you of this. Even if that is the case, it doesn't mean that that tin of sardines is off. They might well taste as fresh as they did on the day that they were first purchased. But that, of course, is besides the point. I will admit I've been shamelessly hanging around in my PJs on a Friday night over the last 5 years, hiding myself away from the world and watching Netflix on my tablet, when I should have been painting the town red and being out there trying to socialise, to meet new people, but I was reluctant to do so. I guess I felt safe tucked away in the secure confines of my tiny apartment, knowing no one could hurt me this way. The trouble was I wasn't getting any younger, and like many young women on the threshold of turning 30, I had dreams of settling down one day and having a family of my own, like many of us do. I was deliberately putting off meeting that special someone because of a dreadful fear of rejection, which I'm sure in one way or another afflicts us all at some point in time in our lives, which may be the reason why I'd chosen to go out with Warren in the first place, for I knew the science nerd that was very much into me was unlikely to ever hurt me, because I could never feel the same way about him, and that made me feel safe and secure in the relationship. I guess after my ex-boyfriend Colton dumped me over 5 years ago, I had sunk into a deep depression, and the thermometer of my self-confidence had plummeted to an all-time low. I do remember the day he dumped me, almost as if it was yesterday, and it still stings badly, just thinking about it. Colton had picked me up from my apartment on a Friday evening. I was so excited about our date, until he said to me, "Trixie, I think we need to talk." When I heard those 4 ominous words, I felt as if a heavy stone had settled in my stomach, as instinctively, deep down in the depths of my gut, I knew what was about to unfold, almost as if I had memorized a script for a theatre production and a part I was playing. Of course, I would never have written such a script myself, if indeed I had been a film writer. I've always been the quintessential romantic type, who loves happy endings. But this was a story where the scriptwriter was determined to tear her characters apart, so that they would be obliterated like the shrapnel on the sidewalk after a major explosion of some sort. Let's just say, in my humble opinion, "We need to talk," are the four most horribly obnoxious words in the English language, especially when they come out of the mouth of your respective partner. Those words mean indisputably that something is badly off, and you're probably on the verge of being ditched. My boyfriend Colton pulled over to the side of the road in his vehicle. It was in a leafy green but sleepy neighbourhood in Portland. He looked extremely uncomfortable, shifting rather awkwardly in his seat, and I noticed his lips were trembling. It was such a magnificent night in Portland, as spring had boldly overtaken a bleak, cold, miserable, and somewhat unforgiving winter. And although the days were a little on the fresh side, the hint of summer was very much on the precipice of being birthed, and during the day the cherry blossom trees were ablaze with pretty ethereal pink blossoms that lit up the world with a resolute reassuring promise of warmer days ahead. I had seen that in recent days, as if by magic, people's yards with their bleached grasses were becoming infinitely greener, as revival had suddenly made her mark. You could feel a new spirited energy circulating around the atmosphere in Portland, almost as if the people, like bears, were finally coming out of a long hibernation. They had come to life again, and there was a buzz in the city. The bars were filled with the cheerful trills of laughter and upbeat music, and during the day coffee bars and restaurants were doing a thriving business, and people began to eagerly abandon some of the extra layers of warm clothing that they had been wearing, rather like reptiles discarding their tired old skins, and choosing to engage more in the social scene, you could say. I had been looking forward to the evening, as it was the first evening in a long time when I could dress up a little. And what girl doesn't enjoy that? I had chosen to wear something rather glamorous for the occasion, which was a startling change from being swaddled in so many layers of winter clothing. I don't think Colton even noticed how good I looked that evening when he picked me up from my apartment. If he did, he never so much as complimented me, which was something he would normally have done. He'd always been a gentleman like that, and appreciated it when I made an effort with my appearance. On what I can only describe as a twinkling evening, I felt bitterly disappointed when Colton failed to compliment me on my brand new hairstyle and the beautiful dress I was wearing, that had cost me a pretty penny, I have to say. My dark brown hair was highlighted with auburn tones, and was thickly layered in an elegant shoulder-length bob, which really looked rather becoming on my small pixie face, even if I say so myself. In truth, Colton seemed otherwise distracted, as if he had something monumental on his mind that did not include me. It could not have been a more magical night. The evening was begging for lovers to come out from their hideaways and take romantic walks down the streets of Portland, holding each other's hands and stealing sneaky sweet kisses down discreet little alleyways. But romance seemed to be the last thing on Colton's mind that night. Colton had said he was going to take me to an excellent Italian restaurant that had recently opened its doors to the public and had taken Portland by storm, with its delicious, authentic Italian cuisine. In my head I had already decided what I would order that night for dinner, as I had a thing for gnocchi, and I was pretty sure it would be on the menu. Just thinking about it was making me salivate, because I was becoming increasingly hungry. I hadn't eaten much all day, in eager anticipation of this incredible food that I was about to enjoy, that had deservedly earned commendable write-ups in all the local papers, with food critics describing the restaurant as like taking a trip to Tuscany. The food is to die for. You'll forget you're in Portland when you eat here. You'll be teleported to a little town in Italy and be eating authentic Italian. Word of advice, make absolutely sure you go to this restaurant very hungry, with an empty stomach. The portions are exceedingly generous, the food mouth-wateringly delicious. Leave plenty of room behind for dessert, for even the tiramisu will send you on a trip to heaven. You want to talk, Colton? I said bleakly, seeing the red flag waving a warning note in my head. What did Colton want to talk to me about? Was he about to ditch me, I wondered. But aren't we supposed to be going to this restaurant you were telling me about? That's all the rage here in Portland? I asked, trying to sound rather casual and relaxed, when I was feeling anything but. My little heart began to race rather apprehensively in my chest, and it was so loud I could hear its throbbing in my ears. Something was up. I could feel it. Colton was behaving very strangely, and seemed to be avoiding any direct eye contact with me. What on earth was going on?
"Of course we're going to the Italian restaurant," Colton affirmed. "I've booked, haven't I? Besides, I understand the food is all the rage. Let's not kid. It's hard to get a table there, because it's booked up so quickly. As I was saying, we need to talk. It would be awkward talking at the restaurant, with so many people potentially eavesdropping on our conversation. I understand the tables there are very close together."
In retrospect, I doubt that being overheard was Colton's true concern. He was probably worried I'd make a scene in front of an audience of spectators while they were enjoying their Italian food on a Friday night. He wouldn't have wanted to become the entertainment for the evening, but he needn't have worried about that, because I'm far too dignified to throw a tantrum or make a scene in front of a crowd. The tone of Colton's voice told me everything I needed to know. Something was definitely up, and it wasn't a good feeling. He was abrasively curt towards me, and shivers of dread began to tingle down my spine, but not in a good way, of course. Ostensibly, it's a feeling that alerts you to the formidable, cruel reality that after Colton's words have been uttered, he can never take them back, and they'll pretty much throw a wrecking ball at my life, one way or another. I was sure of that. For a moment there was a brief silence in Colton's car that was so sharp and so pronounced you could have cut it with a knife. Colton stared out of the windscreen window rather blankly. He had purposely parked his car in this quiet neighbourhood, where there wasn't a single soul in sight, but the street lights lit up the pavements, and the sky was so bright that the houses and front yards were all dappled under a soft illumination from the ethereal silvery glow of a full moon. It would have been decidedly romantic if I hadn't picked up on the stiff tension in the atmosphere that was as thick as black smoke pluming from a burning building.
"Nice night,"
said Colton nonchalantly. "It sure is," I said.
"So bright. So many stars out there tonight,"
he said. "You said you needed to talk, Colton. So why are you stalling? Yes, I agree, it's a fabulous evening. The weather is warmer. Spring is definitely on its way. For the first time in ages you can see I'm not wearing a jacket. But what is it you want to say?" I asked. "You obviously want to say something, so for God's sake say it. You're making me very nervous." Colton turned around to look at me through his steely eyes and said,
"It's not working out between us, Trixie."
Now this was news for me. Not working out? Are you kidding me? Had he really just said that? I was head over heels in love with Colton, and I don't mind admitting that. I'd envisaged spending the rest of my life with him. I thought we were great together, made for each other. I would have been the last person in the entire world to believe that things were not working out between us. So his words were cutting. I know they say in a relationship one person is usually more in love with the other, and in my case I thought that Colton was besotted over me, but it seems I got that horribly wrong. I was clearly more fixated on him than he was on me. I was so dumbfounded by his words that I looked at him with a stupefied expression on my face, as if I had been stung by a jellyfish. I paused for a second and said, very matter-of-factly, "Is there someone else?"
"No, of course there's no one else. It's just, I just don't think we're working out, that's all. I think we should call it quits on our relationship. But of course I would like us to remain good friends. We've always got on very well together. And that's why I thought we could still go to the restaurant after this, because I'd like to keep in touch with you."
When he said this, I felt like someone had thrust a knife in my heart. I bit my lips so hard I could taste the coppery blood on my tongue. I held back the tears that threatened to come spurting out of my eyes and rolling down my cheeks, I couldn't allow that to happen. The thought of gnocchi at the Italian restaurant had long since been extinguished from my mind, as eating anything now, after those cruel words had been uttered, would have made me want to gag and be violently sick. At this point my defence mechanism rolled into action, like an octopus squirting out black ink to ward off a nasty predator. I was determined in this moment to make Colton think that I didn't care a damn that he was ditching me. I did have some pride left in me after all. I wasn't going to become a doormat that he could tread on and take advantage of. Why would I give him the satisfaction of showing him how much he'd actually hurt me? I wanted him to believe that in the grand scheme of things, that he hadn't actually meant much to me in the first place, and that him breaking up with me was no big deal at all. I hoped my insouciance towards him would sting him as much as he was hurting me in this moment. I looked at him with a blasé indifference, as if I didn't care a jot that he'd just dumped me. I almost acted as if I was heartily relieved to have him draw the curtains on our relationship with such a finality. But in truth, I was clandestinely, absolutely devastated. "Oh, I agree," I lied. "I think it's best we end things, Colton. Besides," I said, going in for the kill, "you're not really my type, if the truth be told. Actually, you've never been my type. Why we've ever been together for so long, God only knows," I said, letting out a mute, exaggerated laugh that made me sound like a walrus with a bad cold. I was rather satisfied to see a hurt look cross Colton's face. "Good," I thought. "Put that in your pipe and smoke it. See if you like it. You're not all that, Colton, and not for a moment am I going to give you the satisfaction of thinking that I ever cared about you at all." Colton was silent for a moment, as if he couldn't quite believe my reaction to being dumped. It was as if hot oil-like spatters of his words had come back to burn him on the face, so that he hadn't got away from this scenario unscathed. I noticed his expression had grown deathly pale, and his eyes were almost bulging out of their sockets in surprise, rather like a pair of compound eyes, as if someone had poured a bucket of ice-cold water over his head. Perhaps he thought I'd break down in tears and profess my undying love for him. Is that what he wanted? Well, he wasn't going to get that. I'm a proud woman, and that was never going to happen, not if I wanted to keep my dignity intact. I said to him very coldly, "Forget the Italian restaurant tonight. You know what? I'm not hungry. Take me back home, Colton. I've got some food in the refrigerator I'd rather eat." The truth was, the refrigerator in my apartment at home contained a bottle of mayonnaise, a jar of pickles, and some mouldy cheese that had long since passed its best. But you know what? I didn't care. Spending a minute more in Colton's company after he had dumped me was claustrophobically insufferable.
"But are you sure about this? It's a very good Italian restaurant. Do you want to miss out on all that excellent food? There's been so much write-ups about the place. It would be a pity not to go."
"Oh, I'm absolutely sure," I said. There was no way on God's earth that I was ever going to engage in light-hearted banter with Colton over an Italian dinner when he'd just unleashed an atomic bomb on my life, as it would be like having dinner with the enemy. When you're in that kind of tenuous situation, the best thing you can do for yourself is run away and dive for cover. I remember I was so badly crushed that when I walked through the front door of my apartment, after Colton had dropped me off, I just sank down onto the floor in the hallway and burst into tears. It took me a long while to compose myself, and when I finally gathered my senses together, the first thing I did was call my best friend Ellie to tell her what had happened. She always believed that me and Colton would one day get married, so hearing my startling news would be more than a little shocking for her. "Trixie! It's you! What are you doing phoning me? I thought you were at that Italian restaurant enjoying a meal with Colton." "It didn't happen," I told her. "I'm back in my apartment." "But I don't understand. Is Colton not well or something? Couldn't you go?" "It's not that," I said stiffly. Carlton's absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with him at all. I'm the one that's in a mess, actually." "You're scaring me, Trixie. Has something happened?" For a moment there was a brief silence on the telephone. I didn't have the stomach to articulate the words to my best friend, because it made them become so real. For goodness sake, Trixie, what's happened? Spill, will you? A whimper came out of my mouth, and finally a few wobbly words followed.
Colton told me we needed to talk before we got to the restaurant.
Talk about what, Trixie?
Well, he took a shortcut through this very quiet neighbourhood. He parked his car there. I knew something was off, Ellie. I really did. When he said we needed to talk, I had this horrible feeling in my gut that whatever he was going to say, it wouldn't be good. It turns out, Ellie, I was absolutely right.
What the hell did he say, Trixie? Spill, for goodness sake. You're scaring the hell out of me. What did he say? Oh, please don't tell me he's got cancer or something. Has he got a deadly diagnosis or something?
In a nutshell, Ellie, he dumped me. That's what happened.
He dumped you?
No way, no way. Pretty much. Ellie, I thought he was the one, I wailed. I thought things were going so well between us. I thought we'd spend the rest of our lives together. And now this. I never saw this happening in a million months of Sundays.
Ellie was silent as she processed what I was saying. Then she spurted out,
No way! I don't believe this! Colton dumped you! What on earth is wrong with him? Does he need his head examining or something? A brain transplant, perhaps? You're the best thing that has ever happened to him. And he discards you like an old apple core out of the window on the highway. What a complete douchebag! You've been together for 5 bloody years. That's insane. I thought the two of you were going to get married one day. But this, no! No, I never saw this coming. This is madness. He told me that things weren't working out between us, Ellie, which is news to me. As far as I was concerned, things were going swimmingly. How could I have got this so wrong, Ellie? How could I have misread all the signals?
But you didn't! Trixie, you didn't misread the signals.
I mean, anybody could see that Colton was head over heels in love with you. Well, that's news to me, because it didn't sound like that tonight when he dumped me. Like you, Ellie, I thought that Colton was close to popping the question to me. But it turns out all this time I've been deluding myself, because he wanted to get rid of me. He wanted to break up with me. I'm in shock, Ellie. I feel as if I've been struck by lightning. I'm disorientated and confused. I can't make sense of any of this. I can't believe it either, Trixie. Believe me when I say this to you. I'm more shocked than you are about this breakup. If I were to put money on the horses as to who would win in the relationship stakes among all my girlfriends, hands down, you and Colton would win. You were so good together. Everyone thought you were the perfect couple. I was waiting for that call from you to tell me you were getting engaged. If your relationship fell by the wayside like this, what hope is there for the rest of us? Nobody is going to believe this news. It's so sad. I'm in such shock. You don't suppose... For a moment Ellie stumbled awkwardly on her words, as if she'd ended up in a cul-de-sac that she was trying to negotiate her way around as diplomatically as she could, and needed to cautiously backtrack from what she was actually saying, for fear of hurting or offending me. But I was beyond that now.
You mean, is there someone else? Is that what you wanted to ask me, Ellie?
Just say what you're thinking.
I am beyond caring now.
That is what I was thinking, said Ellie very quietly. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but there isn't someone else, is there? There has to be, though. Think about it. None of this makes any sense otherwise. It's just I'm trying to figure out, Trixie, why Colton would have drawn a line in the sand with your relationship like this. Unless, of course, there is someone else. No one gives up on a good thing unless they think they've found something better to replace it with, if you know what I mean. Not that he could ever replace you, Trixie, of course. Those were my exact thoughts, I said. I think there has to be someone else, Ellie. But he denied it, of course. But they always do, don't they? Deny there's someone else, said Ellie sarcastically. That man makes me sick. The least he could do is be honest with you.
I hope whoever she is, that she and Carlton don't last 2 minutes together, and then watch him come crawling back to you, Trixie, like the maggot he so obviously is, with egg from the dumpster splattered all over his face. I can see it clearly in my mind's eye. Colton apologising to you profusely for letting you go, and telling you he's been such a fool, and that you're the only girl for him. He'll undoubtedly beg for your forgiveness, of course. But the big question is, would you actually take him back, Trixie? I don't think I could take him back, Ellie. I do have some pride. Once someone's done a thing like this to you, and hurled a wrecking ball at your life, how can you ever trust them again? Besides anything else, I pretty much told him he wasn't my type. I acted as if I was almost relieved the relationship had come to an end. I wanted to hurt him, Ellie, to make him realise he wasn't all that. I think that my ex-boyfriend, because I'm going to call him that now because he is an ex now, he does have a bit of an ego on him, without wishing to be mean. But he's often been, you know, a little full of himself. You go, girl. I'm proud of you, Trixie. I hope your indifference towards him gives him a rude awakening, because he needs that. Well, he did look as if someone had thrown him off his pedestal rather violently. Good. It's no more than he deserves. He's a loser, Trixie. I'm sorry to say this to you, but it's true. If he was so willing to spit you out like a pip in an apple, or some old tobacco he's been chewing, then he's a prize idiot. He's like a miner who went looking for gold and threw the highly prized gold back into the quarry and returned home with silver, only to realise later the silver was not so valuable compared to the gold, so he wants to return to the quarry to reclaim his lost prize. But by the time he gets to the quarry, what does he find? Someone a whole lot more shrewder than he was, who knows a good thing when he sees it, has snatched the gold all away. That's what he's done with you, Trixie. Dumped the gold for something infinitely more inferior. And whoever this mystery girl is that is seeing Carlton, well, let's not kid. She's not a patch on you. She never will be, Trixie. That's a guarantee. And it'll only be a matter of time when Carlton comes to the stark realisation of what a complete fool he's been. You would say that, Ellie. That's a very nice thing for you to say, but you are biased as far as I'm concerned. But you're the whole package, Trixie. You look like a modern-day Audrey Hepburn. You've got delicate features, you're petite, slim, elegant, funny, kind, compassionate. You can't say that about many people out there these days. In the same breath, you do sting badly if someone stands on you, like a bluebottle on the beach. So yes, you've got your dignity for sure, and that's a great thing as far as I'm concerned. You'll get through this, Trixie, I promise you that. And one of these days you'll meet someone so great that Carlton will have been like a piece of dust in the eye, once gone, soon forgotten about. While Ellie's words were indeed comforting and rather reassuring, I didn't think I would ever really get over Carlton. He had been the quintessential love of my life, and our relationship had gone up in one evening like the papers being thrown on a bonfire and turning into a pile of smouldering ashes. A couple of days later Carlton called me, for he needed to pop around to my apartment to pick up some of his stuff that he kept in one of my closets, as he would occasionally stay overnight with me. He kept a couple of jackets, a large collection of sweaters, chinos, shoes and toiletries at my place. So I quickly gathered his stuff in a bin liner, ready for him to pick up. I got my next-door neighbour, a girl called Judith Fenter, to loan me a couple of gilded framed photographs of her buff, very handsome boyfriend, who was actually, believe it or not, a fashion model for an exclusive male magazine, so that when Carlton entered the apartment, he would assume that I'd got over him so very fast and was now so obviously dating someone else. That is exactly what I wanted him to believe. He had hurt me so much by dumping me in the way he did, as if I was being poked like a jellyfish on the beach sand. I would fight back with my own form of poison, so to speak. Don't they say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? A truer word was never spoken. I remember Carlton looked visibly taken aback to see a couple of framed photographs of a buff, handsome young man standing up in pride of place on the desk in my entrance hall. I'm sure there was a jealous, rather betrayed, hangdog look in his eyes. Maybe he was beginning to regret dumping me, as when someone doesn't want to take you back, it's human nature to desire what you can no longer have.
"Who is that?"
he asked, pointing to the gilded photograph on the desk. The man was smiling in the camera. He had a surfboard in his hand, and several smitten-looking women staring at him from the distance in wondrous awe, as if they thought he was all that. "Oh, that!" I said nonchalantly, shrugging my shoulders. "That's just someone I'm seeing. We've broken up, haven't we, Colton? So we're no longer exclusive. So yes, I've been seeing this gentleman, since we ended our relationship, of course." I'll never forget the pained look I observed on Colton's face. And I thought, you got what you deserved, mate. You crushed me. Now it's your turn to go through the shredder. Now you can feel the hurt that I'm actually feeling. Colton must have thought we broke up one day, and the very next day I'd grown serious over someone else, as if he was so easy to replace. As cruel as that sounds, that is exactly what I wanted him to believe. I hoped he was hurting as hard as he'd hurt me. And you know what? I'm sure he was. The truth was, the breakup of my relationship with Colton was so incredibly shattering. I couldn't get back on the horse again. So many of my friends at work tried to set me up on a blind date, but I just couldn't do it. I guess the saying, once bitten, twice shy, really did apply to me. You can't be a hermit all your life, my best friend Ellie had said to me, after a year had gone by, and I still had not gone out on the town with her or any of my girlfriends. "What's wrong with you, Trixie? Colton was a complete loser. He was crazy to dump you. But it's his loss, your gain as far as I'm concerned. Someone better will come along to sweep you off your feet. But just move on. I promise you that not all men are going to treat you like he did." It was via the grapevine I had learnt that Colton had been seeing someone else, and this young lady was heavily pregnant with his baby. I could hardly believe it. Later I learnt his relationship with this mystery woman had ended very swiftly. I knew he wouldn't get in touch with me again, or come crawling back into my life, as he emphatically believed he wasn't my type, based on what I'd told him, so he wouldn't humiliate himself any further by contacting me. "Maybe I haven't been out very much," I admitted to Ellie. "I just need some more time to myself." The trouble was I kept saying this repetitively, over and over again, until 5 years had slipped by, and I had not been on a single date since I'd broken up with Colton, although my friends had tried to set me up with someone on multiple occasions. But I was rather like a tortoise retreating back into my shell, as the dating scene absolutely did not appeal to me at all, and in truth it scared the bejesus out of me. "You're becoming exactly like a hermit," Ellie said to me. "I'm sorry, but Trixie, you are. You hide away in your apartment on a Friday night. It's insane. You should be out there having a great time, meeting interesting people. Please don't be such a wet blanket. At least come out on the town for a nightcap with the girls. You don't have to talk to any members of the opposite sex if you don't want to, but for goodness sake, stop locking yourself away in your ivory castle like Rapunzel. At this rate you'll never meet your Prince Charming. Besides, you don't have Rapunzel's long golden hair, so any potential suitors won't be able to climb up 8 floors to your apartment, as your short locks aren't going to be much use, are they?" she teased. It was ironic that even my landlord, Mr. Ferris, whom I rent out my apartment from in Portland, had the audacity to remark on my single status, as if it was something that had not gone by unnoticed. So many of my friends were now getting married. If I wasn't careful, I'd be the last one left on the shelf. I'd always liked Mr. Ferris very much. He was a gentleman in his 50s who claimed to have a niece my age.
"What's a nice girl like yourself doing single?" he asked me one day. "I'd have thought a young man would have snatched you up a long time ago, Trixie. Or are there no sensible young men out there who know a good thing when they see it? In my day, a girl as lovely as yourself would not have remained single for very long. What is the world coming to?"
"It's nice of you to say that, Mr. Ferris, but my last boyfriend, Colton, dumped me, and I never ever got over it. So I'm squeamish about dating now." Mr. Ferris waved an arm in front of his head.
That boyfriend of yours was a fool letting the likes of you go. An absolute fool.
Then there was my mother, of course, who constantly was on and on at me on the telephone, having a good old gripe about how I'm her only daughter and how she's waiting for me to get married and start having babies so she can spoil an entire brood of grandchildren absolutely rotten. If my mother had her way, I wouldn't stop at just 2 children. I would have had 4 or 5 of them. The more, the merrier.
How old are you, sweetheart?
She asked me one day very tactlessly, moving in for the kill, like a shark fin, in the water, spotting a surfer on his board, and determined to cause as much havoc as possible. You should know my age, Mum, by now. Why would you ask me a question like that anyway? You gave birth to me, didn't you? I think you should know my age. You can do the math, can't you? I'm not that old.
I'm very aware of your age, Trixie, and that is the point here. Do I need to remind you that you're on the threshold of turning 30? You are unmarried, haven't dated for the last 5 years, and are beginning to become a recluse in your own apartment. It's desperately sad seeing a young lady like yourself with so much potential and so much to give, wasting away in your apartment like that. This is no way to live, love.
And what's that supposed to mean, Mum?
The clock is ticking, love. You're not getting any younger, are you? I hate to be so blatantly blunt, but it needs to be said. Over the last 5 years or so, you've been on a dating sabbatical. If you carry on this way, you'll be wearing orange and living in a monastery and hanging out with the Dalai Lama for company. Your poor father. Well, he's beginning to believe that we'll never become grandparents, and it's very distressing for him, I'm most sure.
Mum, Dad never said any of that, and you know it. He wouldn't say something like that. The truth is you're expressing what you are feeling about not having any grandchildren and my single status. But don't you dare bring Dad into the equation to try and manipulate me by using him as a pawn in your little manipulative game. I know what you're doing.
Well, sweetheart, if you must know, I do feel shortchanged. I'm not going to deny that for a second. All my friends at book club have daughters that are married, that are about your age, you know. Some of them have children already. And these friends of mine have grandbabies. When I go to the book club, that's all they ever talk about. I feel terribly left out. I mean, can you blame me for that?
So let's see, Mum. What you're really saying is you're sad because you cannot boast about your grandchildren at book club because you don't have any.
Well, it would be nice to have grandchildren. I was looking very forward to becoming a grandmother. But this isn't all about me, love. You should be married by now, with a bun in the oven. When I was 23 years old, I was a married woman already. And at 24, I was expecting you. But with the way you're carrying on, I'll never be a grandmother at this rate.
Mum, for your information, I'm not a baby-making machine. Besides, I haven't met anyone I like to enjoy a serious relationship with. And I'm not going to get involved with someone unless I can actually see a potential future with them. I don't see the point on going on a date just for the hell of it. I'm not that type of girl.
Well, you're not going to meet anyone, are you, love, with such a stinky, pessimistic attitude? And being stuck in your apartment all the time and only leaving to go to work every day and buy your groceries. Well, you are becoming a recluse, love. And acting like an old woman many generations older than you actually are. It's a travesty as far as I'm concerned. You're young, love. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You need to live it. Don't go throwing it away by retracting from the world. As I keep saying, love, you've got so much to give.
Have you been talking to Ellie or something? Is that what this is about? Ellie keeps going on and on at me about going out, and now you are as well.
Well, Ellie's a very lovely girl. She's got your interests at heart, love. She's been telling me how antisocial you've become. I know you were hurt in your last relationship with Colton, but not all men are like him. I can testify to this myself. I mean, look at your dear old father. Believe it or not, he may look like a sack of potatoes now, but he was quite the superstud in his day. I can promise you that. Every young lady my age was green at the gills that he chose me over them. Let's just say, a more loyal man you cannot find. But there are some very good men out there, Trixie. But you're not going to succeed in meeting anyone, cutting yourself off like this away from the world. Yes, we did think that Colton was the one for you. He was a lovely gentleman. We thought he'd take good care of you. But we got him completely wrong, didn't we? Your father couldn't wait for him to pop the question to you. We were waiting on tenterhooks at the time for that to happen. We thought you were both made for each other, but it wasn't to be. I hate to say this, but you have allowed your raw festering emotions over your breakup with Colton that, need I remind you, happened over 5 years ago, to sabotage any chance of meeting anyone else. And that is ridiculous, love. You know it, and I know it. I'm quite sure you'll meet someone who will treat you right. In fact, I know you will. You need to have a little faith, that's all. My whole church has been praying for you, love. Mum, what the hell did you just say? I asked, feeling completely mortified. People in church prayed for the sick, the elderly, the infirm, not over someone like me, who was failing to go out into the big wide world to date, or was having trouble finding a boyfriend. Please repeat yourself, Mum, I said, thinking I must have heard wrong. I was hoping to God I had done so, for the alternative I couldn't bear to think about. I imagined every churchgoer whispering among themselves about me down the aisles, and many of them knew me growing up, as I'd attended church every Sunday with my parents. My mother was a devout Christian. Her motto in life was to turn everything over to God if the problem needed fixing, for God would always make a way where there is no way. I could only imagine what the people in the congregation were saying at church after my mother unabashedly began to air all my dirty laundry for everyone to see. Every splatter, every dirty mark, absolutely everything. Did you know Beryl Lancaster's daughter Trixie has become a hermit? The poor little mite hasn't had a boyfriend for over 5 years. Oh dear. She was overwrought, you know, when her ex dumped her, and she's never been able to pick up the pieces of her life again. What a dreadful shame. Poor thing. We really must pray for her. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder over her last relationship. She's lost all faith in men. She really needs our prayers. So while we pray for the impoverished and the infirm and the sick, we desperately need to pray for little Trixie. Oh, wasn't I speaking clearly, love? Said my mother nonchalantly. I do apologize. Your father tells me I'm always mumbling these days. I was saying my whole church has been praying for you, love. Everybody cares about you very much. They want you to be happy, to find a man worthy of your love. What the hell? I gasped. You got the church to pray for me? Because I haven't been out in a while. Is this a joke, Mum? Of course it's not a joke, love. I wouldn't joke about something as significant as this. It would be in poor taste, wouldn't it? And besides, I wouldn't hear the end of it from your father. Everyone knows that God's will for a man and woman is to come together in marriage, and you deserve that, Trixie. I don't like to think of you stuck in your apartment all day on your own, like a recluse. Your attraction from the world is a very real problem, love. It needs to be discouraged. There are other people like you that also hide away from the world due to social phobias and stuff like that. These are problems that need to be addressed and dealt with. And as I was saying to Pastor Lewis, you've never been the same since Colton dumped you. Mum, you have just humiliated me. Do you realise that? Humiliated me in front of hundreds of people at church. Are you kidding me? I can't believe you had the balls and the nerve to actually do this. For your information, I do not spend all day in my apartment feeling sorry for myself as you claim. You're painting me in a very bleak light. I have a job. I go every day to work. I mingle with people in the workplace. Then I come home and spend time in my apartment. I'm tired after a long day spent at work. You're portraying me like this to the entire church, and it's not fair. It's downright insulting and very embarrassing. You're making me into a laughing stock, the butt of everybody's jokes. Are you telling me you told the entire church I was a recluse and to pray for me to get out of the house? I hope to God you did not. I'll never be able to show my face in that church ever again at this rate. Look, sweetheart, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You have a problem, that's all. I told Pastor Lewis about your problem, and he was very happy to pray for you. And other young people like yourself as well, who've lost the courage to date and who really need to find that special someone in their lives. You're not alone, love. It's not something to be ashamed of. There are many people like you, but the good Lord is the best matchmaker of them all. He will bring the perfect person into your life. Just you wait and see. My prayers are always answered. My God, Mum, I can't believe what you're actually telling me. Do you realise how pathetically small I'm feeling right now? I feel like I want to crawl under a leaf and hide. Oh, my God, I can't believe you had the brazen audacity to do what you did and get an entire church to pray for me. This is so humiliating. Look, you're overreacting, love. Your father thought it was wrong of me to tell the church about your problem. But you know what they say. You need to go boldly to the throne of grace, and the Lord will hear you. I want things to work out for you, love. I'm not going to allow pride to get in the way. Sometimes, Trixie, you are far too proud for your own good, if you don't mind my saying so. And that doesn't get you anywhere. If you want my wizened opinion, which I am quite sure you do not, as you probably think your mother is an old fool, I think you should go out with your best friend Ellie, who has your interests at heart, love, along with some of your lovely girlfriends, and meet some interesting people out on the town. Now that isn't going to happen for you if you shut yourself away in your ivory tower like you do. It's not healthy, love. Me and your father are very worried about you for good reason. Pastor Lewis could see we were grievously concerned about your current condition. Ma'am! I snorted defensively. For goodness sake, leave me alone, will you? I don't appreciate you meddling around in my life like this and telling an entire church that I'm a hermit. You're talking about me as if I've contracted a deadly disease or something. I'll have you know I'm doing just fine on my own. You're worrying yourselves about nothing. And besides, I don't think Dad's worried at all. This is all about you, Mum, and you know it. But are you doing fine, love? My mother said gingerly. I don't think so. If I weren't so worried about you, I wouldn't have spoken about you to Pastor Lewis. He agreed with me that hiding away in your apartment is no way to live. I hasten to say my mother's words had stung really hard, probably because I knew to a certain extent they were true, and none of us like to have an inconvenient truth being spelled out to us, for it makes us uncomfortable, like someone telling us we're drinking far too much alcohol, or are on the precipice of becoming an alcoholic, or we're overdoing it with the painkillers and coming close to being an addict. In my case, the threat of becoming an old hermit was very definitely on the horizon of my life, although I was loath to admit it. I felt mad at my mother for telling the church all about my embarrassing antisocial problem and my inability to go out on the town at night. There were surely bigger fish to fry when it came to prayer requests, but my mother was always incorrigible like that. She would pray over anything that concerned her. I remember she prayed once for our bulldog Poppy to get pregnant with a neighbour's very handsome brown and white bulldog called Bertie. The neighbour was a snooty man called Mr. Greenday, and he didn't want this to happen, even though he refused to get his dog neutered. One day Bertie escaped through a hole he dug under the fence, as he was in desperate hot pursuit of little Poppy, who was in season. My mother's prayers were finally answered. Poppy became heavily pregnant, and my mother ended up giving our neighbour one of her puppies. Poppy must have had over 11 puppies. The formidable Mr. Greenday was pleased as punch. So yes, my mother's prayers were always answered, and with a twinkle in her eye she winked at me and said, "God's got a great sense of humour, you know, Trixie. He answered my prayer. Mr. Greenday was practically eating out of my hands. He's besotted over the puppy. He's chosen to call it Twinkie." It must have been my mother digging the knife in really hard, with her cursory blunt words, that dealt out a hefty punch, especially when she announced that the whole church knew the details of my unfortunate plight, and about how my biological clock was ticking away so fast that if I didn't do something really quick, by the time I looked in the mirror again, I'd be unmarried, 50, and long past my childbearing years. It was these thoughts that propelled me to agree to going out with Ellie and my 3 girlfriends one Friday night, and that was when I first met Warren. "Why this change of heart?" asked Ellie. "I've been trying to get you to come out on the town for ages and ages, and you point-blank refused with a myriad of excuses. You're actually telling me that at long last the bear is coming out of hibernation? I can hardly believe it. What's brought this on?" "Don't be like that, Ellie," I retorted. "If you must know, it's about my mother. She keeps reminding me I'm not getting any younger, that my biological clock is ticking. She's been pestering me that I should go out with you on an evening. So I need to shut her up. The truth is, it's the last thing I actually want to do. But I guess she's right. If I don't push myself, it's never going to happen, is it?" "That's the spirit. I'm so glad you're coming out tonight," said Ellie, throwing her arms around me. "Finally, your mother's actually spoken some sense to you. We're going to have a great time tonight, and if you see a young man you like who approaches you for a friendly chat, please don't push him away. You don't have to marry him, you know. You're coming out for a good time, that's all. But try not to take yourself too seriously for once in your life. Let your hair down and enjoy yourself." The bar in town was a hive of buzzing activity. Not much had changed in that regard. The cheerful chorus of people's chatter and laughter almost drowned out people's voices. Slowly but surely, as the drinks arrived at our table, after a couple of glasses of wine and some pleasant chatter with my girlfriends, I began to unwind, and my nervous apprehension was thrown to the wayside, like a discarded cigarette. And yes, against all the odds, I was actually beginning to enjoy myself, which was rather surprising. "See, it's not so bad coming out on the town with us," said Ellie, giving me an encouraging nudge. "I knew you would enjoy yourself." I had deliberately made very little effort with my appearance that evening, because I had gone out on the town rather begrudgingly, unlike my friends who were dressed to the nines. I was just simply wearing a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. I guess I didn't want to dress up to draw any attention to myself. When it was my turn to order a round of drinks, I staggered rather awkwardly to my feet, as the 2 glasses of wine I had already drunk had gone straight to my head. It was when I made my way to the bar that I saw Warren for the first time. He was ordering a drink for himself and a friend of his. I was standing behind him, but someone behind me pushed into me so impatiently, as such was their eagerness to be served and to get to the front of the queue, as the queue of eager customers was growing quite big. I went barreling into Warren and landed precariously at his feet. Warren turned around and looked down at me. He offered me a hand to raise me back to my feet, which I accepted. "Are you all right?" he asked, looking concerned for me. "I'm fine," I said, letting out a whole lot of hiccups, which made me giggle like mad. Warren smiled warmly at me. "Would you like a drink?" he asked me. I immediately forgot that I was in line to buy a round of drinks myself for my friends. I was now pretty bladdered. "If you're buying, how can I refuse you?" Warren led me to a table in the bar, where he introduced me to his friend, who was sitting there waiting patiently for his drink to arrive. A while later, Ellie and my 3 other girlfriends joined the table, and we ended up having a great evening together. I don't particularly remember much about that evening, because I was rather tipsy. It was at the end of the evening that Warren very shyly slipped a note into my hand and smiled at me. The following morning I read the note. It said, "It was lovely meeting you tonight, Trixie. I would like to take you out to dinner sometime. Please give me a call, Warren." I had decided to give Warren a call, and before long we became an item. I guess I had allowed this relationship to progress, as my sense of foreboding over my single status meant that I jumped into the relationship without much due thought about what I was actually doing. I guess I knew in my heart of hearts that Warren could never hurt me. I wasn't really that into him, so it was cruel to be stringing him along like this. I was now sitting in the passenger seat next to Warren, who was driving to the Oregon coast so that I could meet his parents. I was beginning to wonder what I was doing here in the car with him. I really should end things with him, I kept telling myself. If I'm being perfectly honest with myself, which is something I was loath to do, I would say that I wholeheartedly could not envisage spending the rest of my life with Warren. It would never happen. We were poles apart, even from the way we thought about things. Besides, there was not a scientific bone in my entire body. There really was no future in our relationship, and I knew it. Why am I putting myself through all these hoops, I thought, like a dog at a dog show that stands no chance in winning, but still attempts to give it a go anyway. Even Ellie was telling me I'd lost my marbles going out with Warren. I guess she was right. "He's not your type, Trixie," she told me. "I'm sure he's a very nice guy. He seems very sweet, and I liked him when I met him at the bar." "I could tell he was smitten by you, Trixie. I genuinely liked him, but he's not right for you. Anyone can see that from a mile away. But I can tell you're not that into him either. He's very keen on you, but the feeling is clearly not reciprocated. Do you really want to go hurting him like Colton hurt you? Isn't that cruel? I know I've been encouraging you to get out of your comfort zone and to meet new people, but I wasn't telling you to go out with someone who's a science geek and who's absolutely not your type. I mean, what do you actually have in common with him? Absolutely nothing. When you were at school with me, I might remind you, without wishing to be unkind, that you were at the bottom of the class in science and math. Your talents were in the more creative outlets." "Well, I kind of like him," I said. "He's different from the other guys I've dated. What's wrong with being opposite to him? Don't they say opposites attract? Besides, it's refreshing to go out with someone different." "Refreshing, Trixie? Is that what you call it? I think I know what you're doing. Don't forget I'm your best friend, and I can read you like a book. You're dating Warren because deep down you know you could never love him, so he can't hurt you. You're protecting yourself from being hurt. And what better way to do that than to go out with someone who has no hold over your emotions?" As I sit there in Warren's car, I listen to the wheel of his car as it swishes across rain-spattered roads in Portland that shine under the deluge of rain that shoots down from the sky. I find myself reflecting over Ellie's words. Was she right? Of course she was. It all made so much sense. I was dating Warren as I felt safe knowing that he could never hurt me. I could never love him. Was I really that insecure? It was clear to me that I was. As I glanced outside the window, watching the raindrops rolling down my passenger side window, I was seriously tempted to tell Warren to abandon this road trip and to drop me back home. I think meeting his parents was a step too far. It really wasn't a good idea. I cannot bring myself to telling Warren that it won't work out between us. I can't hurt this young man. He's been so incredibly good to me, so kind and so generous. I just can't do it. The words I desperately need to say are on the edge of my tongue, and are stuck in the back of my throat like a golfing ball that refuses to move. The thought of ending things with Warren here and now seems like the right thing to do. It would be the kindest thing to do, even though I'm going to hurt him badly. But hurting him now will be a whole lot easier than leaving it for longer, when it's going to hurt him a whole lot more. It's not right to lead him on in a relationship that is going nowhere down the fast lane of only what I imagine will be regret and bitter disappointment. I know deep down in my gut, with a clear, unfoggy conviction, that I could never love Warren. He's absolutely not my type. Never could be in a zillion years.
He's far too geeky for me, and also very clever, too clever for the likes of me. When I think back on my ex-boyfriend Colton, he really was my type in every sense of the word. Warren is the antithesis of him in every regard, and yet I sense, unlike Colton, Warren would never hurt me, hence my reluctance to end things with him. Yes, he's cute enough, but he could never measure up to Colton. But then again, I haven't met anyone who actually could, which is the quintessential reason I abandoned dating other men a long time ago. Both Colton and Warren were blessed with having those quintessential baby faces that I typically like in a man. In a strange idiosyncratic way that I can't explain, there is a remarkable similarity in the appearances of both Colton and Warren, almost as if they are related. Chance would be a fine thing. I can't work out whether it's the eyes and nose or the dimples in the cheeks that are so similar. What are the chances that I would see something of my ex in Warren? But I do. Maybe that's why I chose to date him in the first place. Why does everything have to be so damn complicated, I wonder? I keep clandestinely ruminating very silently over my lack of compatibility with Warren. I'm glad he can't see what I'm thinking. Indeed, these thoughts seem to be restlessly plaguing my mind, rather like an ocean crashing towards the shoreline, as the waves become progressively more fearsome. Yet despite everything, I still cannot bring myself to say the words that would ultimately end things between me and Warren, and put a full stop at the end of the sentence for good, with an abrupt but cruel finality. The ending of anything can be tough, we all know that. I think about what Colton's words had done to me all those years ago, when he cruelly told me that things were not working out between us. I felt like a fish that had been speared. I feel as if I would be doing the exact same thing to Warren if I started to express my extreme misgivings about our relationship now. There's a time and place for everything, and telling Warren how I feel would be wretchedly unkind. Look how happy he looks right now. He's so eager for me to meet his parents. I can put breaking up with him off for the time being. Yes, that's what I need to do. Warren is a nice guy, of course he is. Indeed, I very much doubt there's a single bad bone in his entire body. I don't want to treat him with the contemptuous disregard that Colton viciously displayed towards me, because that would make me as cruel as Colton was. But at the same time, do I really want to date someone whom I see no future with? It seems like a pointless exercise. As if sensing my extreme discomfort, Warren turns around to me and flashes me a warm, encouraging smile. He's got very nice teeth. They are very white, perfectly straight, and all his own. He also smells incredibly nice. He wears one of my favourite men's aftershaves. I think it's called Fahrenheit by Christian Dior. I'm reminded of what a nice guy he is. He's gentle, kind, and very sweet and considerate. I can't hurt him, and I can see he really likes me, which makes this all the more impossible to navigate. I feel as if I've got myself parked in a narrow parking spot, and I don't know how to back out of this tight squeeze without causing some kind of upheaval in the process. Suffice to say, I know very well what the feeling of rejection has done to my own life, and it hasn't been good. How can I inflict this on somebody else? I blame my mother for this, with her rambling on and on about how I needed to get out there and paint the town red. She pushed me into going out with Ellie and my friends that evening. If I'd stayed at home in my apartment, I'd never have met Warren in the first place. I wouldn't be sitting in his car right now, pontificating on how I can get out of this relationship without breaking his heart. It's a little like walking over a bed of hot coals and trying desperately not to get my feet burnt. I'm mad at my mum, telling the entire church about my dilemma. When I went to visit my parents last weekend, I bumped into my mother's next-door neighbour. That woman doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut at the very best of times. She also informed me the church had been praying for me. I was wretchedly humiliated. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Mrs. Ella Hewitt gave me one of those pitiful smiles and said, "How are you, dear?" "I'm fine," I said curtly. "You don't have to be so brave, dear. I know from your lovely mother that you've been through quite a whirlwind these last 5 years or so. But things will get better, you know. We've all been praying for you very hard at the church.
Your mum was telling us about you, your condition. I don't have a condition, Mrs. Hewitt, I had said. There's nothing wrong with me. Do I look ill? Now, there's no need to feel ashamed, love. There are lots of people that lock themselves away in their apartments and are desperately afraid to go out. There's a medical name for the condition, I believe. I'm sure the good Lord will heal you. Do I look like I'm afraid to go out, Mrs. Hewitt? I'm visiting my mum, aren't I? That means I'm out. For your information, I go to work every day of the week. I would hardly describe myself as being trapped in my apartment. I'm not scared to go out. I just don't want to always do it, that's all. Look, love, don't get so defensive with me. I'm on your side, you know. I just want you to know that everybody is praying for you. And Pastor Lewis was also praying for you, that you would meet that special someone, she said, giving me a wink. You youngsters these days have such a dreadfully hard time meeting other young people. Anyone would think it would be easier, with social media and online dating platforms. But I'm learning that that is not the case. Mrs. Ella Hewitt reached out to give me a nudge. Never mind, dear. I'm sure you will meet someone very nice shortly. When I think about my mother's interference in my life, it makes my blood absolutely boil. My poor father was so embarrassed when the church prayed for me. He knew there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. The church should be praying for people that are seriously ill. But my mother knows how to make a song and dance about the smallest things. And furthermore, she has no qualms in doing so. And as well as letting everybody know all the details of my non-existent love life. Just thinking about my mother now makes me want to squirm. You know your mother, Trixie, my father said to me. She gets her knickers in a twist about almost everything. She's desperate to become a grandmother, and your being without a boyfriend for the last 5 years has really got to her. I think she's terribly afraid you'll never get married, you know. She thinks you're fearful of relationships after Colton hurt you, which is why she went to see Pastor Lewis about the matter, to get the entire church to pray for you. Your mother emphatically believes that if everybody prays for you, then maybe the good Lord would bring you a husband, and then she'd get the grandchildren she's been longing for. She's relying on you to have a whole football team, Trixie. She's even been knitting little onesies for your babies, in anticipation for that time. But Dad, that's insane! Why would she do that? I said. For a start, why the hell is she knitting clothes for grandchildren she doesn't even have? Lots of people aren't married, but people don't get together in churches to pray for these people as if they've got some deadly incurable disease, do they, that needs to be healed. It's absolutely ridiculous that she got the church to pray for me. Do you realise how embarrassing that is? My father chuckled. You know your mother, my father chuckled. She thinks not being married is a deadly disease. So that's why she got the church to pray for you. I was so embarrassed about the whole thing. I really was. So I do know, sweetheart, how uncomfortable all this is for you. But give your mother a break. She's very well-meaning, you know. Well-meaning she may be, but does she have any idea how much she's embarrassed me? Are you all right? Warren asked me, glancing over his shoulders at me in the car. You seem lost in thought. I am lost in thought. You're right about that. I was actually thinking about my mother, if you must know. Some of the crazy things she tends to do that are so embarrassing. You know what parents can be like. I said, giving Warren a watery grin. It's bleak out there, isn't it, with all this rain coming down in cats and dogs? I tried to say light-heartedly, desperately trying to change the subject. Some of these drivers should be ashamed of themselves. They're driving outrageously on the road. I mean, it's so reckless of them, isn't it? Warren reached over to me to give my knee a reassuring squeeze. You don't have to change the subject, Trixie, you know. I think if the truth be told, you're rather worried about meeting my parents, aren't you? That's what you've really been thinking about. If the boot was on the other foot, I would feel the same about meeting your parents. Don't sweat. My parents are relatively easy-going people, and they're really eager to meet you. They have a lovely house on the Oregon coast with oceanfront views and a stunning beach, so we can have lots of fun staying there."
"They're looking forward to meeting me?" I asked.
"But of course they are. That goes without saying. It's the second time I've brought a girl home for the weekend. So they're thrilled when I told them that I was bringing someone home."
"What have you actually told them about me?" I asked, giving Warren a sideways, rather nervous glance.
Warren grinned. "I told them I've met someone extremely special."
"That's kind of you to say. I hope they're not disappointed. I haven't actually returned the favour, I'm afraid. My parents know nothing about you."
"Should I be offended by that?"
asked Warren, raising a questioning brow. "Absolutely not. I told you, I try not to talk about the people I see. My mother, well, you know, she loves to go poking her long nose into my life. Actually, she's the quintessential reason I went to the bar that night when I met you. She's always pushing me, getting me to do things outside of my comfort zone."
"She's the one that got you to go out to that bar that night?" asked Warren, looking surprised. "Why is that, then?"
"Well, she was telling me I kept myself contained in my apartment all the time, and that I needed to get out and to let my hair down, if you know what I mean."
"Well, then I guess I owe your mother a big thank you. We might never have met otherwise. What a stroke of good fortune that we did meet. The stars must have been aligned so perfectly in the sky. I might never have met you otherwise. What a horrible thought."
I ignored Warren's kind comments and began to wrestle with the radio station in the car to find a good music channel to listen to. Eventually I found a station where the music being played was country, but the signal was good, and so that's what we listened to. A combination of Tammy Wynette, Reva McEntire, and Dolly Parton. We listened to it all the way to the coast. I was never that into country music, but actually on this occasion it really did lighten the mood in the car and calm down my racing thoughts that were playing the same old tune again and again in my head. What am I doing here? Why did I agree to come on this trip to meet Warren's parents, when I really wanted to end things between us? Finally, I'm very glad to say the rain subsided, and a rather subdued sun began to make her appearance known. The journey itself from Portland to the Oregon coast was about 90 minutes, but then there was the extra journey time to get to Warren's house, on a stretch of rugged Oregon coastline, which meant we were probably on the road for another hour or so. As far as I was concerned, we could have stayed on the road forever, as I was not looking forward to meeting Warren's parents. I didn't want them to falsely believe that I was serious about their son, and given I was the second girl he had brought home to meet his parents, they would likely think that this was the case. Little did I know that sometimes fate really can serendipitously open doors that no man can open, and close doors that no man can shut. For fate, probably guided by the hand of God himself, will carry you along her path like a leaf floating across a long, windy tributary of water. I had no way of comprehending that it was a good thing that I had agreed to come out on this road trip, for this was going to be an extraordinary weekend, one that I would never ever forget, that would quite literally change the entire trajectory of my life. And if this weekend hadn't come about, I'm quite sure I would be living a hermetic existence, still in my apartment in Portland, with my mother begging me to find a man so she could have those grandchildren she had been hankering for.
"Home, sweet home," said Warren, giving me a warm smile. "At last we've arrived. It wasn't too bad a trip, was it?"
"No," I admitted. "It wasn't a bad trip, but driving through that rain, well, that was a bit dodgy. Some of those drivers gave me the bejesus, they scared me so much." I was glad the journey was over, as I was beginning to get cramp in my left leg, even after a short journey. Warren's family house was called Seaview Heights, and was located in a prepossessing neighborhood, where the houses stood on a mountainous elevation that overlooked a long stretch of coastline. Warren's family home was on the end of a cul-de-sac on the street, where one side of his family house was fringed by a heavily wooded area. Warren told me if you walked through those woods, you could quite literally take a shortcut to some lovely private beaches. The house that Warren's parents lived in was a double-story house like something you might pick up out of a catalogue. It was pretty standard, but attractive enough, and was painted a very soft, flattering shade of turquoise blue. It had large, oversized windows overlooking the beach, and a big wraparound porch. There were balconies on the higher elevations of the house, overlooking the coastline. I could observe that the views from the street onto the beach below the rocky incline were nothing short of spectacular. I could imagine how lovely it would be to live in a place like this. When we arrived at the house, a very mousy-looking woman stood in the doorway. She looked nervously towards us. She was petite and was wearing a knitted jersey dress with a small girl buckled belt around her middle. There were boots on her small feet. Moments later, a man with a confident assertiveness, like a very demonstrative basset hound, came dashing over towards us. He was extremely well built, with a large stomach that spilled over his chinos. This, I assumed, was Warren's larger-than-life father. Warren's father was all smiles when he greeted me. I couldn't help but warm to the man at once. He was such a likeable, jolly character, who I suspected had a great sense of humour, judging by the twinkle in his brown, bird-like eyes. When Warren had parked the car, his father chivalrously opened my door and greeted me with a firm, very friendly handshake. "You must be Trixie, although I'm afraid my wife is going to insist on calling you Beatrice. I hope you don't mind that. I'm afraid she's got a thing about shortening people's names. It's so good to finally meet you, love. I've heard all about you from Warren. Please do come in. How was your trip, by the way?" "It was very good. Well, in the beginning it was raining really badly. The roads were slippery, and there were some treacherous cars on the road, along with a couple of accidents caused by reckless drivers. But at least we got here in the end."
"Good, I'm glad to see that. I'm afraid it was also coming down in sheets here all morning. There was a fierce northerly wind along the coast, but it's calmed down significantly. To tell you the truth, I was rather worried the two of you would be stuck indoors all weekend, with the weather being so formidable. But it seems to have changed, and at least the sun has come out. Follow me, Trixie dear. I'd like you to meet my lovely wife."
Warren's mother was a shrinking violet compared to his gregarious father. She barely uttered a word to me, beyond, "It's very good to finally meet you, Beatrice." "It's lovely to meet you too," I said shyly, not knowing what else to say to Warren's mother, so I stared at her blankly and just smiled. I will say she did look genuinely pleased to see me, as if she was deliriously happy that Warren had brought a girl home, which I suspect she was. Warren's parents were warmly welcoming towards me, and made me feel right at home. His rather demure mother led me to my own bedroom and bathroom en suite, which I was extremely pleased about, for when you're on the verge of breaking up with someone, you don't want to be sharing a bedroom with them, let alone a bed. Warren's parents were the kind of people that would have frowned on us sharing a bedroom together, unless we were married, of course, and I was not going to complain about that. It was so beautiful at the coast, so a small part of me was actually glad I'd come here. The air was fresh, the views beautiful, the sounds of the waves crashing against the shoreline made me feel as if I was on holiday. Warren and I took a leisurely stroll down the long ribbon of beach sand, and held hands together. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I didn't really mind about this because my mood was upbeat, and I was feeling rather relaxed. I was worried, of course, that I was leading him on, with every intimate gesture, but holding hands wasn't a big deal. We were eating our first course at dinner that evening, when Warren's jovial father told us that his cousin would be joining us shortly. At the time I didn't think much about the matter.
"Cole is staying here for the weekend,"
said Warren's father, whose first name I discovered was Keith, which I thought rather suited him. He was a fun-loving man, who took life at a leisurely pace, and didn't appear to allow anything to get to him, whereas Warren's mother, by contrast, much like my own mother, looked like she could easily get into a flap if something were to upset her.
"Why is Cole coming for the weekend, Mum?"
asked Warren, looking directly at his mother for answers.
"Well, you know," said Warren's mother, "he seemed very eager to get out of town. It's getting on top of him in Portland, you know. Sometimes you do need an escape. I encouraged him to come. You don't mind, do you, Warren?" "Of course I don't mind. It'll be good to see him. I hoped you would say that, love, said Warren's mother gratefully. He was worried he was going to cramp your style, given you have a guest staying with us, she said, flashing me a smile. We began to eat our second course, which was an absolutely delicious rich oxtail stew, made with red wine, served with fluffy melt-in-the-mouth mashed potatoes, and on the side some seared asparagus. The conversation rolled easily forward, like a perfectly orchestrated song, for the banter was really good in between us all, involving a great deal of laughter, while both of Warren's parents asked me all about myself. They wanted to know about my own parents, where I worked, and what I thought about living in Portland. Even Warren's mother, Angela, seemed to come out of her shell somewhat, which made me feel more inclined to relax. Warren's father was asking us how we met, but at that precise moment there was a knock at the door, so neither of us answered his question. "Oh, that must be Colton. He's finally here," said Warren's very demure mother. "At least he'll be able to have some dinner with us tonight. I did hope that the meal wouldn't spoil. I was so worried the oxtail would get cold. I know how your cousin loves oxtail. I made it especially for him." Warren's mother, who insisted I called her Angela instead of Mrs. Carvella, looked up at her husband. "Well, go on, will you? Get the door, love," she said. "Help Colton to get his suitcases upstairs in his bedroom, and after he's washed his hands, bring him down to the dining room to join us." I could hear men's distinctive laughter coming from the hallway, and Warren's gregarious father Keith's impassioned voice saying, "Look what the cat dragged in. It's so good to finally see you again, Cole. It's been quite a while since you graced us with your presence. About time, too." "It's great to see you, Uncle Keith." "Well, likewise. So how was the trip from Portland? At least the rain at rush hour seemed to have subsided." "Well, yes, it did. But there was a catastrophic accident on the road, I'm afraid. 2 people dead, I believe. Because of reckless driving, of course. Why does that not surprise me, Cole? But you're here now, and that's what counts. Tell me, how are you doing? You look rather well." "Oh, I'm doing as well as can be expected. But let me tell you, Keith, it's been mayhem at work. So many deadlines. I just knew I needed a break, or I'd tear my hair out in frustration." "Well, I'm glad you're here, son, safe and well. It's such a treat you're joining us for the weekend. You know what your aunt is like. She's tickled pink that you're coming." As I listened to their conversation, it began to drift away, as the voices steadily became more muted, rather like an aeroplane that flies over your roof, and then it hums and seems to dissipate as it moves further away through the clouds. I remember thinking that Warren's cousin's voice sounded startlingly familiar, but I couldn't place it. "We're all eating in the dining room. Your aunt has made your favourite meal. It's oxtail tonight." "You're kidding me. Oxtail," came the other voice. "Have I just died and gone to heaven? Aunt Angela's the absolute best. If there was a woman out there who could make oxtail like Aunt Angela could, I'd marry her on the spot, no questions asked. Well, you know what your aunt is like. She's got a soft spot for you, Cole. Let me help you take your suitcase up to one of the guest rooms, and when you're ready, come and join us for dinner. Warren's got a friend here, you know." "So I heard," came the voice. The mumble of voices steadily ebbed away, but there was very distinctive male laughter that was still clearly heard, along with the sounds of 2 sets of feet dashing up the staircase very fast. Moments later, Warren's father Keith appeared in the doorway, with a big grin on his face. "Warren's had a long trip. There was a catastrophic accident on the highway, I'm afraid. 2 people killed, would you believe it? But I can't say I'm surprised by that. Cole's upstairs washing his hands. He told me to tell you he'll be down in a second. He's as pleased as punch you've made oxtail tonight. He says no wonder you're his favourite aunt." Warren's mother chuckled. "He says that, doesn't he? I might remind him. I'm his only aunt." "Oh, you are, Colton. It's so good to see you, love," said Angela, sounding absolutely delighted, when a tall, handsome young man entered the doorway of the dining room with a great big cheeky grin on his face as he looked straight at his aunt. "Something smells jolly good, Aunt Angela. A little birdie told me you've made me oxtail for dinner. You're an absolute gem. They don't make women like you any more." Warren's mother looked absolutely thrilled with the compliment. She went bright pink and giggled. "Well, you know me. I can't help myself as far as you're concerned, Colton." In that moment, I very nearly choked on my oxtail. I realized that Warren's handsome cousin was my ex-boyfriend Colton. I wouldn't have recognized him at first because he'd changed significantly. He had filled out a bit and was even more handsome than I'd remembered him to be. Besides, his hair was brushed on the side, which was a different hairstyle to the way he used to wear it. Most members of the Carvella family, with the exception of Angela, called Colton Cole. Angela eagerly rose to her feet, ebulliently wrapping her arms around Colton in an all-embracing warm hug. "Oh, my goodness gracious me! It is so good to see you. I've missed you so much, love." "Likewise, Aunt Angela." It was like she didn't want to let Colton go. She clearly adored her nephew. Warren raised himself up from his chair and walked over to his cousin, greeting him warmly with a firm handshake. I was absolutely astounded in this moment by how Colton and Warren's physical features were eerily alike, although I will say Colton was significantly larger than his cousin, and was not remotely geeky looking. "How are you doing, Warren? Long time no see, cousin." "I'm fine," said Warren. "Couldn't be better, actually." I was sitting on the chair. My face froze, growing as pale as a ghost, when Warren said, "Let me introduce you to my girlfriend, Trixie." Warren pointed to me and said, "Cole, this is Trixie. Trixie, this is Cole." "Pleased to meet you," I said, standing up on my 2 feet and reaching over the table to shake Colton's hand. He took mine in his. Our eyes met, and I could feel my heart doing belly flops. There was such an electric charge between the two of us. Colton's face had grown pink. His eyes were standing up on stalks. He was clearly as shocked and bewildered to see me, as I was indeed to see him. "Pleased to meet you, Trixie," he said in a cracked tone of voice that did little to hide his abject astonishment. "Do you two know each other?" asked Angela, as if she could pick up on some kind of recognition between us. "Absolutely not," I blurted out. "I've never met him before," I said, shaking my head vigorously. "No, we've never met before," Colton lied, realizing that I had my reasons for preferring not to admit that we knew each other in this awkward moment. I felt like a deer caught in headlights. I couldn't believe that I was going to be eating the rest of this evening's meal, with Colton seated directly opposite me. I doubted I would be able to eat at all. I didn't want it to look obvious that Colton and I had a past together. I was terribly afraid the truth would be written all over my face. I knew that during the meal I needed to avoid looking at him at all costs, or I might give myself away. My heart continued to race in my chest, as seeing Colton again had ruffled my feathers considerably. I felt almost like a chicken in the coop who had unfortunately been feathers away from being eaten by a fox. I don't think Warren's mother was fooled at all. She kept giving Colton and I curious glances, as if she'd picked up what was going on. That woman was extremely shrewd. Not much could get past her beady eyes. I knew she knew something was up between the two of us. I had not been able to get Colton out of my head for 5 years, and just when I was trying to break free from the past, here he was back again on the scene, to haunt my life all over again. This just could not be happening to me. What were the chances of Warren and Colton being related? But of course, I thought, they had such similar baby faces, cute dimples and hooded eyes. Their physical characteristics were uncannily similar, and that was one of the reasons that I'd been attracted to Warren in the first place, because even though he was a nerd, there was no doubt that physically he and his cousin looked astonishingly alike, and seeing them together around the table, they could so easily have been brothers. Colton's account. Life had not been easy for me. On the day I had to call it quits with my girlfriend of 5 years called Trixie. She'd been the quintessential love of my life, the woman I intended to marry, to spend the rest of my life with. But it wasn't to be. For something had come along in my life like a cat among the pigeons to cause everything to fall apart, in ways I never saw coming. And the cat in this case was a very conniving woman called Dahlia. When you make a mistake in your life, one way or another you have to take responsibility for it, don't you? If the fox got into the chicken coop and killed all the chickens because you left the door wide open, then you're entirely to blame because you allowed this to happen. My father would call it manning up, facing up to your responsibilities, so to speak. I'm what you might describe as a boringly loyal guy who would never dream of cheating on a girlfriend of mine, especially not Trixie. But sadly, even with one's best intentions, things in life can sometimes cause you to slide down a precarious slippery slope. Ostensibly at my best friend Rod Lowe's bachelor party, that was held at a rather elegant venue an hour outside of Portland, things were to get completely out of hand, and as a consequence I got wasted, to such an extent that I'm afraid to say my inhibitions must have been incautiously thrown to the wayside, which was something I deeply regretted. How I allowed this to happen, God only knows. I have always been reliably self-controlled, but on this particular occasion, for reasons I cannot explain, I fell apart, like a badly made wallet from China, that can't be trusted to last 2 minutes in your pocket. Never mind keeping your loose change safe. I've never been a heavy drinker, but to get into the mood on this occasion, I obviously drunk too much. One thing had led to another, and the following morning I woke up in my hotel room to find I was lying in bed with a strange woman. I cannot describe to you the absolute horror I felt when I realized that I was sharing my bed with a complete stranger, and I had no memory of her, or even the events from the night before. I remember thinking to myself, who the hell is she? And more to the point, what the hell have I done? I could see an intimidating, rather treacherous trail of her lacy undergarments lying conspicuously across the thick, luxurious pile rug of the hotel carpet, leading directly to the bed, leaving me in no uncertain doubt that something untoward had happened between the two of us. You've got to be kidding me. Why is it that I can't remember a damn thing, I thought? I was to discover to my abject shame that I was naked. So a very obvious story of infidelity that I didn't want to entertain was playing out in my mind. There were my clothes that were also strewn all over the place, on the floor and across the chair. There were towels from the bathroom lying in puddled heaps. What the hell had I got up to during the night, I wondered? For I would never have willingly stooped this low as to cheat on my girlfriend Trixie. But there was no doubt in my mind that that is exactly what had transpired, because a picture can paint 1,000 words. I hurriedly, in my shame, gathered my clothes and put them on as quickly as I could. I wouldn't want the stranger to wake up while I was completely naked, and I needed to get the hell out of here before she saw me. I was now in panic mode. I really had no recollection of anything at the party, beyond the last drink I'd enjoyed. I do vaguely recall being led away to my bedroom en suite, when my best friend Rod said I had had way too much to drink, and I needed to sleep it off. The most enigmatic thing of all was I had absolutely no memory of meeting a woman at the party, or a woman ever being in my company, as you didn't have females at an all-bachelor party. So where the hell did she come from? And why was she lying in my bed? Who was this woman? It was so blazingly obvious to me what must have transpired between us, and it filled me with a dreadful sense of self-recrimination. The evidence of my bad behaviour was staring me brazenly in the face, and it wasn't pretty to look at. I dreaded to think what Trixie would make of all this, if she were to see me now. I knew if she were to learn about this night, and about my indiscretion in our relationship, well, it would come crumbling down like a pack of cards. I knew that if Trixie was to learn about this night, A night of dreadful indiscretion on my part, that our relationship would come crumbling down like a pack of cards. I knew Trixie would never forgive me for something like this, especially if she believed I had cheated on her willfully. I had no memory of getting up to any hanky-panky, but it was plainly clear to me that I had done so. I was throwing what was left of my clothes into my duffel bag, when unfortunately the woman lying fast asleep in bed suddenly opened her eyes wide. She sat up on the bed and began to purr coquettishly, like a contented cat. "Come back to bed, lover boy," she cooed. "I'm sorry," I said to her as politely as I could. "I don't know who on earth you are, or what happened between us last night, but I need to leave now." "Don't tell me you've forgotten our night of passion," said the woman, rising unself-consciously to her feet and padding over towards me completely naked. She enveloped me unabashedly in her arms and told me what a wonderful evening it had been between the two of us. "Don't be such a pussy-cat, Colton. Come back to bed, will you? Let's finish what we started, shall we?" she said, patting my backside cheekily and trying to lure me into the bed. "You were a naughty boy last night. You're quite the tiger. Who'd have thought it, when you look so innocent?" she said, tweaking my cheeks mischievously. "That's the problem with having a baby face. You look innocent, but you're anything but, aren't you?" "I don't know what on earth you're implying," I said, my face reddening. "I don't remember anything of what happened here last night. I really don't." "Don't be ridiculous. Of course you remember. You were all over me like a rash last night. Not that I mind, of course." "I was?" I asked. "You're saying something happened between us? I can't remember anything, nor do I remember you." "You don't remember? Of course you remember. You don't fool me for a second," said the woman, with an exaggerated expression of bewilderment on her face. "I know we were a little tiddly last night, but you could not get enough of me. You can't deny that. You were wildly romantic. You even ordered champagne for us. But don't worry, I loved every single second of being ravished by you." I was to learn later that no one had seen me or this strange woman together at the party. Indeed, no one remembered Dahlia at all. My best friend Rod had personally taken me to my bedroom on my own. He said I was pretty much passed out. At the time, I didn't know if the woman set me up, or whether we had copulated together that night or not. The horrifying reality is, at the time, I thought I would never know the answer to the question, as my mind was completely blank, as if I was suffering from some rather weird kind of amnesia that seemed to have wiped a few hours out of my life all clear away. This has never happened to me before or since. I even wondered if my drink had been spiked, but I told myself such thoughts were absolutely ridiculous. When the young woman whose name was Dahlia asked me if we were going to see each other again, I told her absolutely not. "But I really like you, Colton," she cooed. "Last night was absolutely amazing." "I'm sorry if I led you on, Dahlia. What happened between us was a dreadful mistake. It wouldn't have happened if I wasn't so drunk. I am in love with my girlfriend Trixie. I didn't want to tell her what I was really secretly thinking, and that was how the hell did I end up in the sack with the likes of you. I know it's an awful thing to say about another woman, but in my opinion Dahlia was not attractive. She had done way too much work on her face, and probably at great expense. If she had any natural beauty, it had long since been confiscated from the work she'd done on herself, and she was so young she didn't need all those procedures. She had those artificial looks, as if she spent her life getting pumped up with Botox and fillers, as not even her forehead seemed to be able to move on its own accord when she talked. She unabashedly dressed in front of me, wearing a short leopard print dress that hugged her figure like a tight corset, and left little to the imagination. She was obviously the kind of woman that wise, discerning men would flee from if they had any common sense at all, for she would easily seduce you and suck you dry like a female praying mantis, and in her company I wanted to get the hell out of that hotel room and never lay eyes on that woman again, if I could possibly help it.
Is that all you can say, Colton? That you're sorry? You're sorry?
She said, pointing an accusatory finger at me.
Men like you make me absolutely sick. Last night you made it clear you wanted me. And now you're just going to spit me out like a pip on the sidewalk. Is that right? I don't appreciate being used like this. I'm not a floozy, you know.
I'm sure you're not a floozy, but what happened between us was a grievous mistake, and I'm sorry. Life continued as normal for me. I tried to put Dahlia out of my mind, choosing wisely not to say anything to Trixie about Rod's bachelor party. I know this was dishonest of me, but I couldn't tell her about something that could potentially destroy our relationship and tear us wide apart. One day Dahlia arrived at my doorstep. I had no idea how she even found my address, but she seemed to know all the details of my life, as if she'd made a personal life study of me, which was profoundly odd, I could not help but think. On seeing her, I could not help but notice her stomach was exceedingly large. It was obvious to me she was heavily pregnant. She was proclaiming adamantly that the baby she was expecting was mine. When I did the calculations, I realized to my horror there was a grim possibility that I could indeed be the father of her child. My worst, most dreadful fears were being confirmed. I didn't know what the hell to do about this mess I was embroiled in. "How do you know it's mine?" I asked her.
"But isn't it obvious? You're the only man I've been with since that party. I told you then I wasn't a floozy. I don't make a habit of going to bed with men, you know. If you don't believe me, we can always do a DNA test after the baby is born."
I knew I needed to take my dilemma to my father for some of his wise counsel and instruction. It hadn't occurred to me that Dahlia would lie to me, given we live in the day and age of DNA analysis, where any untruths can be easily exposed. I knew my father would think I was a prize fool for messing around with a perfect stranger who I wouldn't have chatted up in a bar if I was single and sober. In the beginning, I did my level best to try and make this initially non-existent relationship with Dahlia work. I didn't want to turn my back on the baby she was carrying, that I believed was my own. My father, who was resolutely old-fashioned by nature, had insisted I do the right thing by Dahlia, and after visiting my pastor at church for some much-needed advice about how to deal with this difficult matter, I hasten to say he pretty much said the same thing as my father had done. "Look, son, I'm not going to beat around the bush and tell you what you want to hear. I think you should try and be a father to your child. That would be a noble thing for you to do. I'm afraid so many single parents out there raise kids on their own. The children suffer as a consequence. Some of these children end up homeless on the streets, taking drugs, cruelly abandoned because they were never wanted in the first place. I'm sure you wouldn't want to do that to your own child, but regretfully it's a fact of life. I have to ask myself why these innocent children have to be treated like this, how they have to become a victim of parents who selfishly only consider their own interests and needs first. When it comes to raising our children, we need to be selfless and sacrificial on their behalves. I always warn young men such as yourself not to get intimate with women unless they're prepared to marry the girl in question. But so many fail to listen to my sagacious advice, and they end up regretting their impulsiveness. But of course, Pastor, I regret what happened between me and Dahlia. If I could take it back, I would. But why should I marry a woman I don't even love, that I'm not even attracted to? It makes no sense at all. Look, son, there are many people in the world today that have arranged marriages. They manage to make those relationships work, and I'm sure initially they're not even attracted to each other. Do you know in India, where marriages are often arranged, that the divorce rate in those countries is incredibly low? which in my opinion speaks volumes. Let's just say in their cases, two people come together who don't even know each other. Think about that for a moment. Nor do they love each other, but they make it work. But they're complete strangers, I said. How can two strangers who aren't even attracted to each other make it work? But they do, don't you get it, son? That's the point. They don't know each other from a bar of soap, but they come together without any preconceived ideas. And maybe that's one of the quintessential secrets of their success. In the West, we put too much of a burden on our relationships by backing out the moment things get tough for us. In these arranged marriages, both parties know they're going to have to make their relationships work, and there are no ifs and buts about the matter. And guess what? More often than not, they end up falling in love, or at the very least growing fond of each other. And I see no reason why that shouldn't work between you and Dahlia, if you put effort into your relationship. You have made this woman pregnant, Colton. Granted, you do not know her, but now is your opportunity to rectify this problem by getting to know Dahlia better and establishing a relationship with her. For whether you like it or not, you are about to be a father to her child. You need to take responsibility for your indiscretions, as that is what a good man would do. Some people might say it's old-fashioned, but the old ways are the most chivalrous. Even though I was not well acquainted with Dahlia, and hardly knew her well, I knew my pastor was speaking sense. I needed to at least give Dahlia a fighting chance with the relationship, as she was the mother of my child. But I wasn't going to marry her straight away. That was something I was exceedingly reluctant to do. I knew I should try my level best to make the relationship work as best as I could, and that would mean ending my relationship with Trixie as gently as possible. I reasoned with myself that Dahlia would never lie to me. She had said I could get the DNA of my daughter checked out after she was born, because it was affirmed to me that the baby we were expecting was a little girl. In truth, it was too dreadful to even comprehend life without the love of my life, Trixie. But as Pastor Mick had told me, I needed to think about the welfare of my child first and foremost, above myself and my own personal interests. You never know, young man, he said to me. God can bring people together in unlikely ways, but you have the perfect opportunity to do the right thing by Dahlia, so do it. My mother, who rarely loved my girlfriend Trixie, and could see how cold, hard-hearted and aloof Dahlia was as a person, was not remotely happy about the pickle in which I found myself entrenched. She impassionately felt that both my father and Pastor Mick were being completely unreasonable on the advice that they were giving me. "We're not living in the 1800s, for goodness sake," she retorted. "Why are you and Pastor Mick being so old-fashioned about all this?" she said to my father scoldingly. "You're stuck in a time warp, for goodness sake. Nobody in this day and age thinks like you or Pastor Mick, for that matter. I've seen some sad advice being doled out in my time, but this advice of yours takes the absolute biscuit, and I don't say that lightly, I might add. Can you not see what a travesty this whole mess is? You're practically encouraging our son to marry someone he doesn't even remotely like. Who on earth does a thing like that? It's nonsensical. These days, relationships easily fall apart, even when people love each other at the best of times. What hope is there if Colton doesn't even like Dahlia all that much? Now, personally, I can't blame him for that. The woman is absolutely awful, so self-centered, wretchedly selfish, and very self-absorbed. I've never seen anything like it in all my life. I'm sorry, but she has no redeeming qualities, and I don't look forward to her being my daughter-in-law. She's like the Ice Queen in Narnia, in the story of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, who clearly thinks she's very, very sexy when she's anything but. I believe she's deliberately got pregnant so that Colton would marry her. She's very manipulative like that. It's clear to see." "That does not matter at all," said my father. "Even if Dahlia has manipulated Colton, she won't be the first woman to do this, nor the last. I'm afraid Colton has made her pregnant, so he should do the right thing by her. And in the end, I hope they'll get married. He has made his bed. He needs to lie on it. That's what he should do. He has a child he should consider. This is not about him anymore. Don't you want your grandchild to be raised in a stable, secure, loving environment with two parents that love her?"
"But of course I do. But I'm not certain that Dahlia is going to be much of a mother to that woman. Goodness gracious, is her name Dahlia or Dahlia? I really don't know. I know nothing about this woman. But I do know one thing. She's completely obsessed with herself. That is clear to see. Do you know when she was in this house the other day, having dinner with us? She must have looked at herself in the mirror over 20 times. I've never seen anything like it. Her vanity knows no bounds. And she's got nothing to be vain about whatsoever."
"Now you're being unreasonably unkind, love. I may remind you, Dahlia may be your future daughter-in-law, so don't pick fault with her. I'm sure underneath all the layers she's not a bad woman. You just need to get to know her a little better. And besides, there's no crime in being a little vain. A lot of women at her age are like that, a little obsessed with their appearances. But is that such a bad thing anyway? I'm quite sure she's looking very forward to having this baby."
"Well, I don't care what you say about her. I don't like her one little bit," my mother chided. "There's something so desperately underhanded and calculating about her. And personally, I'm surprised you're not more discerning, and that you can't see it. I'll have you know that nowadays lots of young women are single mothers to their children. And why can't Dahlia be the same? I mean, what on earth does she have in common with our son? Nothing at all. I don't believe for a second their relationship will work, even if you do. Colton has always loved Trixie, and you're telling me he has to give her up for this?"
"Don't finish your sentence, love. It's not a good idea. I don't want to hear what you have to say on the matter, because you're going to say something unkind. And you're talking about the mother of our grandchild, and I won't have it."
"But I don't like her, love, and I'm a very good judge of character. Something about her is extremely off. If Colton and Dahlia get together because of the baby, that's ridiculous. Things will definitely fall apart at the seams. I think that Colton should contribute financially to the child and involve himself in her life. But there is no way he should marry Dahlia or commit to her in any way. The idea is absolutely ludicrous."
I knew, of course, my mother was speaking sense. I had nothing in common with Dahlia. I found her to be very sly. There was nothing warm about her character that would make her the least bit likeable. Besides this, I have never found her attractive. To be honest with you, I have always liked natural beauty in a woman. Dahlia seemed to emulate a Barbie doll, and everything about her appearance was extremely fake. It didn't help that her cold, aloof attitude made her all the more unappealing. She was a shamelessly flirtatious woman, I have to say, who used her looks to ensnare men. But beneath her shallow, vacuous veneer, there was something untoward about her that was exceedingly off-putting, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly it was. Looking back, I suppose she was treacherous and ruthlessly determined to get exactly what she wanted out of me, and would probably walk over cut glass to get it. I remember the night when I picked Trixie up from her apartment. How heavy my heart was. I knew I was about to end things with the love of my life, which was one of the hardest things I would ever have to do. In truth, I couldn't envisage living without Trixie, but I had to end things. The last thing I wanted to do was to drag Trixie into this mess that I had made for myself. She didn't deserve any of that. I was going to be a father to another woman's child. I was not exactly left with the freedom of choice in the matter. I decided the kindest, most dignified thing for me to do was to tell Trixie things were not working out between us. There was no point in telling her the entire truth. It would make things so much more complicated and messy. In Portland at the time, it would seem people had come out of their winter hibernation with a spirited vigour. The atmosphere was extremely ebullient. People friskily shed their winter coats. Like cocoons they no longer needed. There was an upbeat charge of electricity in the air. The weather was definitely warmer. Daffodils and cherry blossom trees proudly adorned the sidewalks with splashes of cheerful colours, alerting everyone to the new beginnings that this preciously treasured time of year always invited. I had promised to take Trixie to a rarely wonderful Italian restaurant that evening. This was the inauspicious evening where I intended to end things with her, so my emotions were extremely fragile. The restaurant had received no end of excellent reviews in regards to its fabulous authentic Italian cuisine on offer. But I couldn't imagine eating much tonight, not when I was going to do something that I knew I would regret. Trixie and I had been talking about trying this restaurant for quite some time. When she opened the door of her apartment that evening to greet me, she looked stunningly beautiful with her new hairstyle that was heavily layered. This was complemented by a beautiful black dress she was wearing that was both stylish, modest, and classy. So unlike the rather unfortunate skin-typed, revealing leopard print designs that Dahlia would wear, that left little to the imagination. These women were poles apart. My mind was awhirl with the responsibility of becoming a father to a woman that I didn't even love. So I guess when Trixie met me at the front door that evening, I probably looked a little worse for wear. Trixie even commented on how pale I was.
"What's wrong with you, Colton? Are you all right? You're as white as a sheet."
"I'm fine. I just suppose I had a slight headache earlier on this morning," I lied to her. I knew I was going to have to end things with Trixie, and I wondered in my heart how the hell I was going to do this, graciously, tactfully, and diplomatically, without causing her hurt. I had plans to talk to her after our dinner at the restaurant, but my chest felt so tight and constricted that I knew I wanted to get this off my chest as quickly as I possibly could, because I might just lose the balls to do it. When I told Trixie that things were not working out between us, she was very curt and matter-of-fact with me. The very worst part of it all is she agreed that our relationship had not been working out. Now this was news to me. I thought things between us were pretty much close to perfect. I thought we were in love with each other. If that was not bad enough, she told me I'd never ever been her type. I was stunned by her heartbreaking comments, because Trixie was in every respect the perfect woman for me. To hear that she didn't feel quite the same way about me was gut-wrenching and soul-destroying, to say the very least. Her words ruthlessly pierced through my heart, as if an elephant trunk had gone right through me. It was brutal. I'd rarely believed we were very much in love with each other, but she was brushing me off nonchalantly, like dog hairs on a coat, and it hurt like hell. But I suppose I deserved it. Needless to say, she asked me to drop her off at her apartment straight away, and after her cruel, unexpected, blistering outburst, I was rather relieved to do that. How had I got our relationship so badly wrong? How could I have falsely believed this woman was my soulmate, when all the time she didn't even think I was her type? Maybe I really was meant to be with Dahlia after all, because all the arrows were pointing in her direction. But I doubted I could ever love her like I did Trixie. In the end, I never took Trixie to that Italian restaurant, but I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have been able to eat anything that night. Trixie did ask me, of course, if I was seeing someone else. She looked at me rather suspiciously, because I think she suspected I was. I mean, what could I say to answer that question truthfully? Because I was seeing someone, but it was against my will. Imagine if I said to her, "Oh yes, I went to bed with a woman at a party. I don't remember a thing about it, but now this woman claims I'm the father of the baby she's expecting, so I've had to step up to the plate and do the right thing by her, even though every single cell in my body is telling me to run away from this insane commitment because it's ludicrous. How could I tell her something like that? I mean, I might potentially break her heart. But then I had to reconsider whether I actually would, because she no longer seemed to be that into me anyway. Things got far worse for me, if that was at all possible, when I arrived at Trixie's apartment a day or two later, with my tail very much between my legs. I felt very sorry for myself. I had to pick up my stuff, which she had ruthlessly discarded in a black bin liner that she had left in the hallway, so that she could throw me out of her life like a rabid dog she no longer wanted any contact with. Maybe I'd hurt her breaking up with her like I did, but it certainly wasn't showing on her face, for she looked at me with such disinterest. I might as well have been a salesman at her door, trying to sell her a kitchen gadget that she didn't want. Ostensibly, it was almost as if she was heartily relieved to see the very back of me, which really cut to the throat. It was regretfully in the entrance hall that I observed a couple of framed pictures of what looked like to be a handsome young man, standing in pride of place on the desk in the hallway. My hair on the back of my neck stood up on end, as I felt an untethered jealousy rip through me like a green tsunami. Who the hell was in those photographs? And why were they standing upright on the desk in a prominent position of significant importance? I'd never seen a photograph of that man before. I asked Trixie who the photograph was of, and she admitted it was someone that she was seeing. I mean, can you imagine how brutal that was for me? It was a cold, hard, cruel slap on the face. The most hurtful part of it all was that I couldn't believe Trixie had replaced me so easily. Was I that easy to forget? Was I that disposable? Had our loving relationship together meant absolutely nothing to her at all? Was she such a cold, unfeeling bitch? I felt as if a knife had been thrust through my heart, and my self-esteem had plummeted, being pulverized so cruelly that there was nothing left of it at all. I walked away from Trixie's apartment like a wounded animal, feeling that relationships with women were a hell of a lot confusing. And as for Dahlia, well, let's just say I could make no sense of her at all. Needless to say, life goes on, whether we like it or not. One day will roll into another pretty seamlessly. My relationship with Dahlia was not going well, but that was to be expected. She was as hard as old boots, ruthlessly determined to get me to pay for everything even before the baby was born. I suspected half of the money she requested was being extravagantly spent on herself, to buy her more very revealing figure-hugging outfits, as every time I saw her, she was wearing something new and decidedly expensive, if not very tasteless. It was after the baby was born that I was exceedingly excited to become a father. Dahlia chose to call our baby Megan. She was perfect, the sweetest, most adorable baby girl I'd ever seen. But then I was inclined to be biased. I was very proud to become a father, and as a consequence determined to try and make my relationship with Dahlia work, however hard it was. I mean, if people in India could make relationships work with a perfect stranger, then why couldn't I? Even Dahlia was making a very big effort with our relationship, so I would do my damnedest to make things work, for the sake of little Megan. My mother, who has always been very astute by nature, felt something was up when the baby was born. She discreetly did a DNA test on little Megan, to find out if indeed she was my little girl. It was with shock horror that I was soon to discover that Megan was not my little girl, and that Dahlia had set me up so that I would be a father to her child, and give her daughter a good life, given I was successful in the workplace, earning a respectable, reasonably good income, and my parents were both wealthy. It turned out that me and Megan had not been intimate together at Rod's bachelor party. It would have been impossible for me to succeed in that regard. Dahlia had been pregnant all along when she'd set me up. She deliberately spiked my drink that evening and cunningly prepared the bedroom at the hotel, so it deceitfully looked like we'd been intimate together. She told me I'd been out for the count. She had slipped something in my drink at the party. I do not remember ever meeting her, ever seeing her, nor does anybody else at the party. She finally admitted the bitter truth. Yes, she had set me up. Yes, it had been intentional. Yes, it had been pre-planned. My parents were wealthy. She believed that if I were to be the father of her child, her daughter would be set up for life financially. She had been looking for someone decidedly wealthy, who would be a soft touch that could be artfully manipulated. Obviously, she thought that I would be a soft target. She thought I could be easily duped, so I don't exactly know what that says about me. She was grievously upset that my mother had stumbled across the truth. For some bizarre reason, she believed that she could get away with deceiving my family into assuming that Megan was my little girl. But she had underestimated how shrewd my mother actually was. "So you deliberately set me up?" I asked her. "Why would you do such a dreadful thing, Dahlia? That's a cruel thing to do. I thought I cheated on my girlfriend Trixie at the time. I can't understand you." "I'm a mother, Colton. I'd do anything for my little girl. Surely you can understand that. If you must know, I grew up in a trailer park. I had life very hard. My parents were perennial drunks, and sometimes there wasn't enough food in the house to feed us all. It was very tough and hard going. I grew up in a dog-eat-dog world, but I don't expect you to understand that because you've always had things good. It's a kind of world where the toughest survive. You either sink or swim. I chose the latter. I wanted a better life for me and my girl. I'd been through so many hard times. I didn't want that for my child. So I got creative as how I could make that happen. When I learnt about you, your religious beliefs and ethics, I saw you as a soft touch, Colton. You're a desperately nice person. It was easy to manipulate you. And yes, I saw you as a meal ticket. I knew you would never check your daughter's DNA once she was born, because with one look at her, you'd believe she was unequivocally yours. And doing a DNA test would almost be a tacky thing for you to do, so you just wouldn't do it. I hadn't bargained, of course, that your mother would be ahead of the game and clandestinely check Megan's DNA. I mean, can you blame me for doing this? Put yourself in my shoes, Colton. Imagine growing up in an environment where everything is a constant struggle. Nothing ever came easily for me, you know. It's called survival. You do what you have to do to feed your children and to give them the best life you can. Call me ruthless, call me despicable, call me manipulative if you like. I don't care. I just want the best for little Megan. Can you not see that? I guess there was a part of me that could understand why Dahlia was so desperate to find a father for little Megan. But I certainly didn't appreciate being duped in the way that I had been. For she had come along like a great big rhinoceros and bulldozed my entire life. I was exceedingly heartbroken to discover that Megan was not my little girl. That was the hardest part of it all. It is true, after she was born, I was absolutely convinced she was mine. I'd never have dreamed of doing a DNA test. It would feel like I was doubting my own progeny. I loved her as if she was my beloved little girl, because love is not just about blood, as any adopted parent will easily tell you. In the end, I guess Dahlia won her little game. I loved little Megan as if she was my own, and so did both of my parents. So I insisted on sending Dahlia money every single month, and continue to do so. My parents had agreed to pay for Megan's education. So despite everything, we have all made little Megan part of our lives. So she has been adopted by my family, in a manner of speaking. So Megan will get the good life that Dahlia envisaged for her little girl. And my father helped Dahlia to start up her own nail salon, which has become a thriving success. So in the end, the woman with her manipulative plans did actually win. 5 years had gone by, and I had been on a few horrendous dates since then, where the woman, I hasten to say, were not interested in getting to know me as a person. It was clear they just wanted one-night stands with me, and I'm not the kind of guy that's interested in a fling. I don't want to waste my time with shallow, meaningless liaisons. I know people enjoy meeting up with perfect strangers in that regard, but that absolutely is not for me. I want to get to know a woman before things get more intimate between us. But the girls I met didn't seem to be on the same page as I was. I retracted from the dating life, deciding it was too much like grievous hard work. And in the end I thought I'd sooner be alone, rather than put up with all that hassle. I was hoping I'd meet someone special, of course I was. But the only woman I really cared about was Trixie. But then she had no interest in me. There was no point in trying to reconnect with Trixie. She had made it painfully clear to me that I wasn't even her type. Yet I will admit a day did not go by when I didn't think about her, and regret greatly that we were not together. But if she didn't feel the same way about me, what was the point anyway? It was on a lonely Friday evening in my apartment in Portland that I decided, for reasons I cannot comprehend, that I needed to escape the rat race of the city for the weekend and enjoy some fresh sea air for a change. I therefore contacted my Aunt Angela, who lives by the Oregon coast, and is by nature a reticently demure person, while my Uncle Keith is larger than life, with a huge jovial personality that you warm to at once. I had called my Aunt Angela, who's my mother's younger sister, to ask if I might stay over with the family for the weekend. It wasn't that uncommon for me to go off and stay with my Aunt Angela and my Uncle Keith, who always seemed to enjoy having me to stay with them. Aunt Angela's house overlooked a dreamy beach and a grove of ancient trees. For me, going there was a great escape. My aunt and uncle had a son called Warren, who was my cousin. He was the same age as me, and growing up was a bit of a geek, but I'd always liked him, even though we didn't have very much in common. My Uncle Keith always called me Cole instead of Colton, but my aunt hated having my name shortened like that. "You want to spend the weekend with us?" she asked me enthusiastically. "But how perfectly wonderful, Colton! It'll be absolutely wonderful to see you. You know you never need to ask to come and stay with us. You're welcome any time. Just so you know, your cousin Warren will be home for the weekend. He's bringing a girlfriend home with him. Can you believe that?" "Wow, Warren a girlfriend? Now that's a turn-up for the books. I didn't know that he was otherwise attached," I said, unable to disguise my distinct surprise. "Well, it's great news, isn't it? I gather her name is Beatrice. Quite an old-fashioned name, actually. Warren is bringing her home to meet us, and for him to be doing this, it must be rather serious on his side. I think this is the second time he's actually brought a young lady home with him, but the last girl he brought home to meet us, well, we never saw her again, which was a dreadful pity. I hope we didn't scare her off." "Hardly, Aunt Angela. These things happen." "Well, I guess they do. Well, you know what Warren's like. He's never had it easy with the girls. So I'm very happy for him that he's met someone else. He's so desperately shy, isn't he? Uselessly unassertive. He probably gets that from me, I'm afraid. I've always been the type that never said boo to a goose. He's not like you, Colton. You've always had it easy, girls running after you in every regard. But Warren has struggled so much. I hope this relationship works out for him, I really do. I don't want his heart to get broken again like last time." "You're too much of a soft touch, Aunt Angela. You're incorrigible," I said. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about Warren. I'm quite sure your son, as they say, is big and ugly enough to look after himself. If this young woman called Beatrice breaks his heart, well, what can I say? It's the passage of life. You can't protect him from everything that comes his way. And sooner or later we all get our hearts broken. It certainly happened to me, and I'm not over it yet. You're a wise soul, Cole. Really you are. You're a great deal like your mother, you know, in that regard. That sister of mine has always been as shrewd as a hawk. Like when she's discreetly got the DNA tested to discover that Dahlia's child was not your own. I couldn't believe that story, and how we'd all been hoodwinked by her. What a dreadful woman she was. But goodness gracious me, at least you got Megan embroiled in your life, because that little girl is a delight to behold. Well, I'll take that as a compliment, shall I, Aunt Angela? But I doubt that I'm as shrewd as my mother is, I'm afraid. I'm happy for Warren, though, that he's met someone nice, I mean. I do hope for his sake that she's a keeper. Are you absolutely sure I won't be in his way, cramp his style, so to speak, if I come and stay for the weekend? Oh, I'm absolutely certain about it. Warren will be delighted to see you, Colton, as will we. I'm sure he might appreciate some young energy around the place. The more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. And you know, Colton, you're always welcome to bring a friend with you if you like. There's plenty of space at the house. We've got lots of spare rooms. When I arrived at my uncle and aunt's house on the Oregon coast, they were in the middle of enjoying dinner together. I was absolutely famished, and when I discovered that Aunt Angela was making oxtail, which is my favourite dish, I was very eager to get down to dinner. After I'd left my baggage in my room and washed my hands, I quickly came downstairs to join my aunt's family for dinner, only to discover to my shock horror that Warren's new girlfriend was no other than my ex-girlfriend Trixie, whose full name was Beatrice, but nobody ever called her that. But obviously my aunt fancied calling her by her full original name, as some people feel the name Trixie is more suitable for a dog. I was so astounded to see Trixie sitting in the chair that my jaw just dropped open and almost fell onto the ground. As my eyes met Trixie's, there was an exchange between us that was almost electric. I could see her face had paled with shock when she saw me, almost as if she thought she was seeing a ghost. "Do you two know each other?" my Aunt Angela chortled. But Trixie immediately interceded and said, "Absolutely not. We've never seen each other before." I immediately agreed that we had never met, but the words did not slide so easily out of my mouth. I'm not sure my aunt was buying any of it. She says my mother's discerning, but let's not kid, Aunt Angela is extremely astute, and I think she could easily sense we recognized each other. She cast me a bewildered look, as if to say, "What's going on here?" I was so confounded to see Trixie, obviously I was, so much so that I tried not to look at her during dinner, because I was getting so distracted, and I was barely able to concentrate on the delicious oxtail I was eating. It pained me to look at her, especially when Warren kept putting his hand over hers. I had no idea what game Trixie was playing, but what the hell was she doing with my cousin Warren in the first place? That I could not understand. I knew unequivocally those two had absolutely nothing in common. It was more than a little bizarre that they seemed to be together. I couldn't help but feel sorry for my cousin Warren. He looked so animated, so deliriously happy to have Trixie at his side. But I could predict that this was a relationship that would never ever last. I privately wondered what had happened to Trixie's relationship with the man in the photograph I'd seen on the desk in the hall, when I'd come to her apartment to pick up my stuff. She had made no secret of the fact that she was seeing someone else, as if she'd changed her brand of peanut butter overnight. That was how quick she was to replace me. She must have ended that relationship a while ago. But what on earth had induced her to go out with Warren of all people? As you can imagine, when I retired to bed that evening, I was exceedingly restless. I couldn't get a wink of sleep. I was glad that Trixie was not sharing a bedroom with Warren, but was sleeping in a spare room. My aunt wouldn't have had it any other way. The thought of them being together would have driven me insanely mad. Seeing Trixie again had stirred up a wild storm within me that I couldn't silence for a second, as it thrashed through me all night. I realized that I'd never stopped loving her for a second, but I knew she could not return that love back to me. She had made it clear to me that I was not her type. So did I imagine all the electricity between us that evening, when we'd seen each other again for the first time in 5 years? I had wanted to throw her in my arms and never ever let her go. I didn't know how I was going to get through this weekend with Trixie by Warren's side all the time, and having to keep up the pretenses that we didn't even know each other. It was killing me seeing her with my cousin, and I know my Aunt Angela had not been fooled for a second. She knew that Trixie and I knew each other, and that there was history between us. I was tossing and turning all night in my bed, wondering if I should go home, as seeing Warren with Trixie was upsetting me, and only serving to remind me of how much I'd lost, and how empty and vacuous my life had become, without Trixie in it. In the end, when I glanced at the clock on the side table, and discovered it was 1 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't believe it was that late. Sleep had completely eluded me. It was at this very early hour of the morning that I decided that I needed to get out of bed, take a walk on the beach perhaps, because I couldn't get to sleep. So then what was the point? A walk under the stars with my torchlight for company didn't seem like such a bad idea. It would help me gather my thoughts together and decide what I should do about my feelings towards Trixie, that clearly had not gone away after all this time.
Trixie. It had been impossible to get any sleep that night, as I lay in my own bed tossing and turning, unable to believe that Warren's cousin was no other than my ex-boyfriend Colton. The family called him Cole, with the exception of Angela, of course, who called him by his full name. I had never heard his name shortened like that before. As I was thinking over things, I heard a slight banging sound in the house, and the heavy tread of footsteps going down the staircase. I realized someone was up and about at this early hour. I glanced at my nightstand. It was 1 o'clock. I hadn't been able to get a wink of sleep, but then that wasn't remotely surprising, because Colton was the only thing on my mind. Whoever was wandering around was not being very quiet. I heard a door slam. I sat up in my bed with a start, paying attention to the sounds around me. Someone had exited the house at this outrageously early hour of the morning. I wondered if it was Warren's father, perhaps. With my curiosity piqued, I trotted over to the window, pulling back the curtain, and that was when I saw him very clearly, washed in the soft illumination of an almost full moon. It was Colton. He had a torch in his hand and was trotting down the wooden steps that were embedded in the hill that reached the beach below. What the hell was Colton doing up at this early hour? Why was he going to the beach? What I did next surprised even me. I promptly pulled my tracksuit on over my pyjamas and put on a pair of sneakers, and gingerly I made my way out of the house, taking ever so much care to be as noiseless as I possibly could. I found a torch in an open cupboard in the kitchen that had been carelessly left wide open by Colton himself, who was obviously looking for a torch to take with him onto the beach. I found a small torch that gave off a satisfactory full beam of light. I discreetly exited the kitchen door, taking care not to make a noise like Colton had done. Frankly, I was rather surprised he hadn't succeeded in waking up the entire household. But then again, perhaps they were deep sleepers, and after all, I had been wide awake when I'd heard the noise. It would seem nothing stirred in the house. Everything remained resolutely quiet. I did wonder if Colton made a habit of getting up at this insane hour of the morning. Was this a new thing with him? I'd always thought that he was the type to sleep in late on a morning, but not tonight. Was he as restless as I was? The night was magnanimous in her generosity, for the moon graciously allowed her soft pearly prisms of light to confiscate some of the dark shadows, which made creeping out onto the beach at this time of the morning a lot less intimidating for me. The velvety black sky was ornately bejewelled with her allotted assignment of silvery stars that glowed like little tiny galaxies hundreds of light years away. Even I had to admit it was spectacular. There was a gentle breeze blowing, which is often the case at the coast, but the fragrance was very briny. The air was not cold. I'm glad to say it was a reasonably warm night, and it was not unpleasant being out and about at this hour of the morning. I could hear the rhythmic roll of the zestful ebullient waves that never tire in their aerobic dance routines, crashing towards the shoreline very elegantly. I trotted down the wooden steps embedded in the hilly incline, and once I reached the beach sand, I immediately threw my shoes and socks off. I could see Colton had done much the same as me. He had discarded his boots at the bottom of the steps, so that he could walk on the beach sand barefoot. The beach sand was cold to the touch, but it was still a pleasant feeling beneath my feet. I glanced over the long ribbon of sand to look for the figure of Colton strolling down the beach, but there was no sign of him to be seen anywhere. There was no way he could have got far. Perhaps he'd gone into the woods, but then he wouldn't do that barefoot, would he? My gaze focused on the rocky outcrops on the edge of the beach that overlooked the wood grove. Oh, there he was. I could see him now. I observed an ambiguous, foggy, human-like silhouette from the distance that I immediately assumed must be Colton. He appeared to be bending down over the rocks, as if intently looking for something. What on earth was he doing? Had he dropped something, I wondered? The frisky, rather devilish waves were beating viciously against the rocks, pounding them profusely with ubiquitous injections of watery spray. And yet Colton was treacherously navigating his way, rather nonchalantly, across this undulating gathering of rocks, as if it was water off a duck's back to him. Colton's enigmatic, idiosyncratic behaviour at this tenebrific early hour of the morning seemed peculiarly strange to me. Surely the waves flying over the rocks were soaking his clothes, and he was getting badly drenched to the skin. The water was likely to be very cold at this time. I was profoundly conscious of the fact that I was on the beach, practically stalking Colton, like some deranged, obsessed fan, following around a celebrity crush. But I just couldn't help myself. I really needed to know what he was doing. A feeling of nervous anxiety scorched my chest, like the burning sensation you get from acid reflux. What on earth would I say to Colton when I approached him? "Oh, I was just taking a walk on the beach myself. Fancy running into you, Colton. Who would have thought it? What are you doing here? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do make a habit of getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I do it all the time, just to take a light walk, you know. Well, yes, it's a new thing with me. You see, I used to sleep in a lot, late on a morning, but now things have changed exponentially. It's as if my internal body clock has done a complete 180 on me. Oh, what am I doing out here on the rocks? Well, yes, I saw a figure, didn't I? But I had no idea it was you. I needed to get my story straight, to explain my unlikely presence on the beach. I didn't want him to think I'd been following him around. As I rehearsed my lines on what I would actually say to Colton, I decided to approach him with due caution, just in case my confidence suddenly waned, and I felt the desperate urge to retreat on my tracks and go back to whence I'd come, pretending I'd never seen him shooting off in the early hours of the morning to take this walk. I persuaded myself that this was my quintessential opportunity to get him on his own, to remind him to keep storm that we knew each other. Just as I was getting closer to the figure on the rocks, my torchlight suddenly went dead. I began to shake my torch vigorously, to galvanize it to work again, but it resolutely, stubbornly failed me, and things became a whole lot darker. The moonlight helped me to see Colton to an extent. I could see his long, lanky figure leaning awkwardly over a rock pool, almost as if he was scooping something out of the water. What on earth was he doing? I realized he appeared to be wearing a thick, velvety woolen jacket. It was not that cold, for goodness sake. Talk about overkill. He looked like he was dressed for the North Pole on a reasonably mild night like this, which was incongruously absurd. As I approached Colton, I leaned over his long, lanky body, that I couldn't see desperately clearly, as the moon suddenly began to hide rather demurely behind some cloud cover. I tapped him on the shoulder of the woolly jacket. His body was lying flat against the rocks, and he was leaning into the rock pool with his head peering over the water. "Colton! It's me! It's Trixie! What are you doing?" Colton jumped up, like a spring bean, landing nimbly on 2 feet. But the figure standing before me was not Colton at all. It was an 8-foot, very massive female Bigfoot. How on earth could I have mistaken Colton for her? You've got to be kidding me. This just could not be happening to me. Was this even real? Should I be afraid? Wake up, I told myself. This is just a dream. Of course it's a dream. You must be in your bed having a lucid dream. That's what this is about. I could persuade myself that this was indeed the case, as much as I liked, but it didn't change the fact that this was no dream, and I knew it. I was locking eyes with a female Bigfoot, who seemed as startled to see me as I was to see her. We were staring at each other in abject astonishment. There was no communication between us, but blank stares, but there was something so incredibly expressive about her eyes that made me instantaneously like her, although I knew nothing about her. It's like when you meet someone at the supermarket very briefly. You cross paths with them, flashing them a warm smile. You don't particularly know that person, but you somehow know in your heart that if you did, you'd get along famously. I felt oddly like that, almost as if in some way I could relate to this wild humanoid creature that lived such an incredibly different life to myself. I guess if a wild zebra in the wilderness met a domesticated horse, they would realize they had much in common, for they would recognize the similarities in each other. And I observed the humanness in this Bigfoot, as she did in me. I guess the female Bigfoot had been leaning over the water in the rock pool to look for some sea creatures to eat. She had caught a couple of very large crabs, which she'd bashed with the back of a stone. I also observed some seaweed that was flung over her shoulders, which I'm sure she intended to eat, although I cannot be sure about that. My mouth had dropped wide open in surprise, while my eyes bulged from their sockets. I was so confounded in this moment that fear never even pestered my mind for a second. I guess when something takes you by surprise, like a lightning strike from the heavens, it throws you into such a conundrum, you don't have much time to engage in any disquiet. Yet it was after my eyes met the Bigfoot's that any fear I might possibly have entertained dissipated like the steam from a kettle. All of a sudden, the moon came out again, shining her gloriously bold illumination over the Bigfoot, so that I was in no doubt what I was seeing. The Bigfoot was tall and lofty, a lot like Colton, who was reasonably tall himself, and extremely well built, but he was no patch on this Bigfoot, who was infinitely more strapping than some of the most well-built men on this planet. I knew it would be with ease that this Bigfoot could lift up a car, and with help from her kind, easily move it, almost as if transporting a piece of furniture with a removal man from one room to the next. That was how incredibly strong she was. She was covered in long, flowing, dark black hair that was not remotely woolly like I'd first assumed. No wonder I thought that Colton was dressed for the North Pole. Her shoulders were absolutely massive, her torso incredibly ripped, almost as if she did hundreds of thousands of sit-ups every single day. I could see her tree-trunk-sized legs were powerful, her posture reasonably straight, although her shoulders were stooped forwards, as if she was desperately trying to make herself appear smaller to me, so that I wouldn't find her so intimidating. She stared at me through bright yellow eyes, and her nonplussed, perplexed look changed into one of curiosity, as if she was wondering what I was doing up and about at this insane hour of the morning. She also appeared to be interested in me, and it felt as if she was looking at me and studying me like a book. Then what happened next is that she handed me one of her dead crabs, and then I heard the words in my head. "They're very tasty. I hope you enjoy." She then turned around, got back onto the rocky ledge, and began to fish around in the rocky pool, undaunted by my presence. I continued to watch her for some minutes, while feeling such a sense of privilege for encountering such a gentle human creature, who I could see did not have a nasty bone in her entire body. I knew in that second that I would never forget this brilliant evening, when something wildly exciting had crossed my path and changed my perception of reality forever. I glanced down at the beach, and that was when I saw the figure of Colton further up the beach. I was so excited to see him. I wanted to show him the Bigfoot I'd met. I forgot all about my former reservations, about explaining my presence to him on the beach, and I began to run across the sand towards him as fast as I could. My breathing was furious. I ran straight into Colton, almost knocking him over. I grabbed his hand earnestly, the words tumbling out of my mouth like an overexcited child who's seen a shooting star. "Oh, my God! You've got to see this! You've got to see this, Colton! Come with me now!"
Trixie? What the hell? What are you doing up and about at this hour of the morning? And on this beach, of all things?
I ignored his questions. "Come with me! You've got to come! There's no time to lose! I've got to show you something! You've got to see this!" Colton could see I was carrying a dead crab in my hand. He looked taken aback by this, but said nothing, as I led him with one hand to the rocky outcrop. My excitement had infected his curiosity, for he knew, judging by my obvious ebullience, that I'd seen something absolutely incredible. So all his questions for the moment were put on the back burner. "She's over there! Look! She's over there! Can you see her? Over there!"
"What's over there?" asked Colton.
"A female Bigfoot! A female Bigfoot! She gave me this crab I'm carrying. She's fishing in that rock pool. Initially I thought she was you. I tapped her on the shoulder, and then she gave me the crab. She's so nice, Colton, and she's beautiful too."
"You thought a Bigfoot was me?" asked Colton. "You actually touched her?"
"I did! Can you believe that?" The Bigfoot was pulling stuff out of the rock pool. We eventually heard her smashing a couple more crabs. She then rose steadily to her feet, threw some more seaweed over her shoulders, while in her hand she carried a pile of crabs. She suddenly stopped short in her tracks when she observed me with Colton. We were both watching her. She simply nodded at the both of us, and then glided seamlessly over the beach sand, into the woods, until she disappeared before our very eyes, and was gone. Colton's mouth was hanging wide open in astonishment.
"Did you see that, Trixie? It was a female Bigfoot. We've just seen a Bigfoot."
We began to hug each other impulsively, and Colton held me so close that I could hear his heart thundering in his chest. And then he said to me,
"You smell good. I've missed you so much, Trixie. You have no idea. I've missed you more than anything in the world."
"I missed you too," I said. And then we began to kiss. And we sat there on the beach together, holding each other's hands, laughing and talking, and watching the sun rise. We talked for a long time, and he told me all about Dahlia, and why he'd broken up with me. And I admitted that I'd never stopped loving him, and that the photograph on the mantel in my hallway of a buff gentleman had been placed there deliberately to fool him, because he'd hurt me so much. He shook his head and laughed.
"We've both been bloody fools. Why I ever believed you when you said I was not your type, I honestly don't know. I should never have broken up with you, Trixie. You were the love of my life, and you still are. You have my heart. Fancy meeting you again like this. It was so random, was it not?"
"Maybe it was meant to be."
"You know what, Trixie? I think it was."
Goodness gracious, my mother got an entire church to pray for my love life, and the prayer was answered, but not in a way I imagined. I didn't expect you to show up in my life all over again. This is the best day of my life in every sense of the word, and the Bigfoot has made it all the more special."
"It sure has. Let's just say this is an evening I shall never forget. One of the best evenings of my entire life."
To cut a long story short, Colton and I finally came clean to Warren's mother, that we did know each other.
"I knew it! I absolutely knew it! You did not have me fooled. I could see there were fireworks between the two of you. I knew you had history together."
I hasten to say it was rather tough having to let Warren down gently, and to inform him that I was not really into him. But the moment Colton had come into the dining room that evening, He claimed he had sensed the energy between us, so he was prepared for me to break up with him. I do believe my mother's prayers may have played a quintessential role in bringing me and Colton together. We are now happily married with 2 children. It was at my wedding that Warren met one of my bridesmaids, and she had always been a bit of a science geek herself. The 2 of them hit it off and got married the following year at the same wedding venue where we tied the knot. So yes, you can say some things are clearly meant to be when the stars are perfectly aligned, as they were when I encountered the Bigfoot on that beach tonight, and me and Colton came together after 5 years apart. So there you are. That's my story. Goodness gracious me, what a romantic story. I absolutely love that ending. And what an incredible encounter with a Bigfoot on a beach. Imagine thinking that your boyfriend is that Bigfoot and then realizing to your astonishment that you've tapped a Bigfoot on the shoulders and that Bigfoot is not the person you believe they are. That must have been quite a shock.
Well, hello there. I hope you enjoyed the Omnibus edition. We've got many more coming our way for you to listen to. Sending you love wherever you are in the world, in North America, Canada, Kenya, wherever you may be. I send you lots and lots of love. Thank you for listening to my Omnibus, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, because that's the whole idea about it, is to give you some interesting stories to listen to. So until next time, goodbye and good night.